Welcome. This is the Tuesday, February 24th special meeting of the City Council of the City of Louisville. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hefner,
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Here.
Councilmember Cooperman,
Here.
Councilmember Fahey,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton,
Here.
Mayor Lay,
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Okay, please rise as able and to Pledge of Allegiance, please. We've got three main items on our agenda tonight. The first is a presentation by the Boulder Valley School District defining the path forward, a strategic communication or community engagement plan for resilient schools. And understand we have folks from the school district here to join us. I want to say just at the outset, welcome. And also that this is a presentation, which means in our world here that there's going to be a presentation of information, questions by council. It's not going to be a night when we're going to take public comment. Obviously, you can get back with us about comments that you may have about it. But this is just kind of unpacking some really important information, as anyone who's read the packet can see. So with that, welcome.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I am Rob Price, Assistant Superintendent of Operational Services for Boulder Valley School District. And I am joined by Deanne Bucher, our Board of Education board member who represents District E. And I'll let Deanne introduce herself.
Hello, I am Deanne Bucher and I represent Louisville as part of my job at the school board. And I've represented Louisville for a long time because I used to teach at Monarch High School. And so it's a familiar territory for me. But I really wanted to thank you all for being so quick in inviting us to give this information, because the longer you have with it, the more it'll make sense and the more feedback we can get before we have to make really hard decisions. So I honor you for being speedy and getting on the rounds for this presentation.
All right. Thank you, Deanne. Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, here tonight to present our community engagement plan as we work forward to create a path for resilient schools. So want to quickly give you an overview of tonight's presentation. We are entering a challenging but necessary period of planning for the district's future. And the reality is our limited resources are stretched thin across the number of under-enrolled schools. That's growing a number of inequities that directly impact student opportunities and the programming that we are able to deliver. And to preserve the high quality education our students deserve, system-wide adjustments ultimately will be required. However, before any plan is developed, our absolute focus is to listen to our teachers, listen to our principals, listen to our community and families as we work through. So tonight I'm going to walk you through a big picture at district enrollment. Then we're going to look at the closer look at the interconnected Superior and Louisville regions, why enrollment matters, and then how we have responded to date. So I do appreciate Louisville's comprehensive plan that speaks to being a community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive now and for future generations. Generations who are now in our schools. Your vision calls out themes of resilience and sustainability, which also aligns with what we are trying to strive to provide as we work ahead as a school district. I would also say it aligns really closely with our values. The mission of Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. These values are important because they will guide us and as we approach this very difficult but honest conversations ahead of us. Before talking about challenges, I want to ground us in some points of pride. Boulder Valley School District is performing at the highest level we ever have. We are the only school district in the Metro Denver area accredited with distinction. Our graduation rates are well above the state average, and student performance in English and math is the strongest it's been in over a decade. These are just a few things that I could highlight with not extending this for a number of hours here. But the reason I really share this is simple. Declining enrollment is not the result of failing schools. This is our new demographic reality facing us along with a number of other districts in the state of Colorado and across our nation. So across this state, K-12 enrollment has been declining for several years. This past year saw the largest single year drop since the pandemic. BVSD is not unique in this. What we are seeing is driven by a combination of factors, including declining birth rates, which leads to fewer kindergartners, an aging population, low inventory of housing opportunities, high cost of living, and families just finding more affordable housing in neighboring and surrounding communities. And what this really tells us is that we have to plan differently than during the decades of growth. This graph shows our enrollment trends from 2015 to 2025 and illustrates the reality of our sustained decline. So since 2017, our enrollment has declined by more than 3,600 students. This year alone, our enrollment declined by about 525 students, which was almost double what we had originally projected. Some of that due to some of the federal immigration of what we have seen across this country. And the clear takeaway is that the declines are real, they're sustained, and accelerating faster than we had projected. As we look ahead, we are projecting an additional decline of about 1,700 students over the next 5 years. So all grade levels are affected, but elementary continues to drive the most facility and programmatic impacts. And as you all know, the most crucial point, this is the most crucial point because elementary schools are the foundation of our educational system. We have the capacity to serve more than 14,500 students in our non-charter schools. We currently serve 9,700 elementary schools or elementary students in those schools, which means we roughly have 4,800 open seats currently, and that is projected to grow to about 5,100 open seats across the district in 5 years. So the takeaway from this slide is that we are maintaining a significant amount of underutilized space, which is diverting the limited funds that we do have away from the classroom and direct student supports. So I'm going to turn our focus now to Louisville and Superior, which faces some of our most acute challenges. As we look at the 6 schools in Louisville and Superior, our utilization is 64 or 67%. Projected to drop to about 64% in 5 years. We have the capacity of about 3,000 elementary students, and we're currently serving a little over 2,000 students. This slide looks at enrollment in Louisville and Superior together. And the reason we do this is these two communities are closely connected as they feed into Monarch High School. 2 main points I want to highlight on this slide. And first, the graphic on your left shows the number of elementary aged BVSD students who reside in Louisville and Superior and where they attend. This graph distinguishes between students who attend their own neighborhood school, students who attend another neighborhood school, attend a focus school, et cetera, as you can see. And then the graphic on the right shows who is attending elementary schools located in Louisville and Superior and what portion of that enrollment comes from those within the attendance area and those that open enroll into Louisville and Superior schools. So when you look at these two visuals together and then you look at the bar charts below, you see the same patterns, just really from two different angles. Since 2018, the population of resident BVSD elementary students in Louisville and Superior has dropped by roughly 700 students. And the decline in the underlying population is the primary driver of what we are seeing in our schools. It is about fewer elementary age children that live in our community. This slide looks at how many students live in each attendance area and whether they attend their neighborhood school or another school. So we also reference classes per grade level, which is a metric we use to understand how enrollment might be impacting the student learning experience at schools. And we'll get into that in a moment. But the key takeaway in this region is that we only have enough resident students to support more than 2 classes per grade level at 3 schools. 2 schools are already at or near 2 classes per grade level, and 1 school does not reach that threshold. So this information isn't on the slide, but when we look at historical BVSD resident student counts, the change is pretty significant. In 2015, we had 643 elementary students living in Louisville Elementary's attendance area. Today, that number is 411. At its peak in 2018, we had 652 students living in the attendance area. Coal Creek, similar story, 2015, there were 471 elementary students living in Coal Creek's attendance area. Today, 324 students live in that attendance area. At its peak, Coal Creek had 490. So not small fluctuations. These are really sustained declines in the number of elementary students that we are currently serving. This slide illustrates the enrollment composition in each school, showing resident students versus the students who open enroll into the school. You can see that some schools are heavily reliant on open enrollment to maintain their current size. And we are expecting enrollment declines at 3 of the 6 schools over the next 5 years, and that's illustrated with the red diamond that you can see on each line. This slide is looking at a forward-looking snapshot across the Louisville and Superior elementary schools really over the next 5 years. So I'm going to walk you through how to read this. Across the top, you see projected enrollment in rounds, which is really the classes per grade level, year by year. On the left side, you see schools listed along with its building program capacity and the current enrollment of each school. And the percentages reflect projected building utilization. In other words, how full each school is. What is important on this slide is when a school drops to 2 classes per grade level or below or less than equal to 60% of their capacity, it is shaded in yellow. And when a school drops to 1.5 classes per grade level or below and less than 50% capacity, it is shaded in red. So those colors become really important. As we look and the longer we go out, the more color you see, and those thresholds matter because they really start signaling programmatic stress at the school. As schools fall below 2 classes per grade level, it becomes harder to sustain stable staffing, strong collaboration amongst our teachers, and the robust programming that we strive to provide. And really what this slide shows is more of those schools in those yellow and red zones over the next 5 years. And this is not about a single school experiencing temporary dip. It is definitely a regional pattern that we are seeing in Louisville and Superior. The key takeaway on this slide is we will continue to see more schools operating at enrollment levels that strain programming and creating inequities across our entire system if we do not take action. This by far is the reason we are having the discussion tonight and the most important slide we will talk about tonight. The core impact of declining enrollment is on the student experience. And I think one of the most frustrating things for me is when you pick up the newspaper, the first thing you usually see is a school's closing or schools are consolidating. It doesn't talk about districts trying to improve the learning experience for our students. But what we do know as schools move from 3 classes per grade level to 2 classes per grade level to now we are even starting to see multi-grade or mixed grade classrooms. We do know that programmatic offerings suffer. In smaller schools, this shows up as traveling teachers, complex scheduling, limited teacher collaboration, and reduced access to other enrichment experiences. I talked about earlier our district performing at the highest level ever. And the reason for that is our principals and our educators are working harder than they ever have. And what we know is that is not sustainable. And that's why we need to take action. However, when we think about this, if we do not take action to address declining enrollment, the impacts are not abstract. They show up in students' daily experiences and how we are able to use limited resources we do have. Without action, families will continue to see reduced access to learning opportunities, including fewer specials, limited instrumental music, less intervention support, fewer advanced learning opportunities across the system. And I would think we would all sit here today and say those are all core parts of a well-rounded education. We will continue to see fewer adults supporting students, including counselors, librarians, instructional specialists who all play the critical role in a student's success and well-being. Without action, we will see more multi-grade, mixed grade classes, traveling teachers, which reduces stability, instructional consistency. We'll see an increase in grade levels with only one teacher rather than a team of teachers. Which reduces the opportunity for our teachers to collaborate and have shared planning time. And then over time, these impacts continue to lead to growing inequities across the system, continued spending on underutilized buildings, diverting dollars away from the classroom and direct student support services. The one thing after studying this for 4 years is should not depend in Boulder Valley School District which school you attend based on the resources you are going to get. And without action, the access to our programs and supports really does become increasingly uneven across this district. So we do know that inaction will continue to erode equity, stability, and the student experience if we do nothing over time. This slide illustrates that we did not start work on this recently. In 2022, our Board of Education created the Long Range Advisory Committee to advise the board on this matter. And since that time, the board or Long Range Advisory Committee staff have been studying enrollment trends. We've been developing metrics, engaging communities, and updating board policies to address this matter. The pace and the scope of this really reflect sustained Board of Education interest and really direction over multiple years. The work on this slide also shows that we have tried to pull every available lever to change enrollment trajectories across this district in order to avoid school adjustment options and the conversation that we are having. This work has been very deliberate over 4 years. The efforts definitely helped over a couple of years, actually slowed declining enrollment down, but they have not reversed the underlying trends of the demographics that we are seeing. These goals will frame our work as we begin the community engagement process. So future decisions must maintain and improve learning outcomes for all students. That will continue to be our priority and what we strive to do. We must distribute students so all schools have the right level of students and resources to maintain high quality learning experiences. This process is also about stabilizing enrollment by retaining our current students and attracting new families to the district. And then we must maximize all efficiencies to address our ongoing challenges. The Options on the right side of this slide are typically the tools that districts would use to respond to declining enrollment. Again, you see a lot of these in the newspaper. Based on the programmatic impacts that we have seen and our board has seen across the district in some of our smaller schools, our board has made the decision that allowing schools to stay small is no longer an option. So that is why that is stricken. The other options that you can see are listed there. For example, grade reconfiguration. If you had two schools that are close together, you might look at a K2 or a 3-5, or if you had two K8s, you might look at an elementary school and a middle school, for example. Relocating focus programs. We have a number of focus programs in the city of Boulder, potential to bring those to other parts to encourage more enrollment at a specific school. You could consolidate two or more schools into one school, or you could close a school and redistribute those students amongst many schools. So those are the options that many districts utilize and that we have studied and that we have came up with. I want to be just very clear as we head into this process. We do not have any options in mind. The intent is to listen first and then develop options based on the feedback that we receive through the engagement process. So that is exactly what we will do. And again, we do not have any predetermined outcomes as we move this work forward. So given the urgency of declining enrollment, we're now turning to the critical phase of community engagement. Our commitment here is to ensure stakeholders are informed, they are heard, and they are meaningfully involved as we begin shaping potential paths forward. As I mentioned, this phase is about listening first, creating space for thoughtful, structured input that will help develop the options that we present to the board for consideration. This slide sets some expectations for the engagement process. Engagement will help us build understanding, gather input on values, priorities, and trade-offs, and inform Board of Education decision-making. It will not guarantee that specific schools remain unchanged. It will not delay action indefinitely, nor will it transfer decision-making away from our Board of Education. And my hope by setting these boundaries up front is that we are being very transparent about what this process can and cannot accomplish as we move forward. And I do believe that clarity will be very important to help us be productive and honest about the conversations as we will be having over the next couple of months. So the engagement structure is designed for focused regional input. These are the three regions that we will be engaging with, and those are Boulder, Louisville and Superior, and Broomfield. And this is where our enrollment challenges, again, are the most acute. We would hope that, we know that our principals and our educators will be participating in this process. We would hope that our community, our families, and members of council will also participate in this engagement process. So the Board of Education will continue to remain at the center of this as we move this work forward. As we look at the overall engagement timeline, phase one began in January and continues through the end of this month. During this phase, Dr. Anderson, our superintendent, and our board members are meeting with every elementary school principal and every elementary school educator. And that intent is to just better understand the concerns that they're facing right now and what they hope will come out of this process. We're collecting that feedback as we move through. We are also engaging our district advisory committees and beginning conversations with municipalities as we are doing tonight. And then phase two is when we will begin the formal conversations with our community. And those will take place from late March through May. And we'll hold those as regional community group meetings. And then we'll have some targeted stakeholder meetings. And additional details about those meetings will be coming out in the next few weeks. Once the engagement is complete, we will gather that and we will present that information, the feedback we receive through this process, to the Board of Education in June. And then from June through August, staff will develop school adjustment options informed by the community input we received and the board's established goals that I presented earlier. In September, staff will bring forward a final plan for study. And then in October, staff will present a final plan for action. The timing is intentional, so as it aligns with our open enrollment window, which runs from November 1st through the first week or second week of January. At each of these stages, there will be an opportunity for public or community input at our board meetings. Beginning in November of this year and then continuing through August is when we will support impacted families, support our staff through the transition. I would just reiterate the key takeaway here is this process is very deliberate. It is very transparent. It is a multi-step process that again begins with listening and then thoughtfully towards action as we move forward. So transitioning from the timeline, I guess my message would be this is demographics are not a problem that we as Boulder Valley School District can solve. They are a reality though that we can plan for together. And we all know that strong neighborhoods and resilient schools required shared awareness, shared planning, and shared stewardship from us all. And that is why we are here tonight. So our ask from you is we are asking for a partnership in supporting a thoughtful, a transparent, a community-centered process. A process that includes engagement, recognizing the link between school sustainability and community vitality. And with that, that wraps up our presentation. I do appreciate you giving us time tonight, and I am open for any council questions or discussion.
Yes, we're going to try to consolidate our questions, each of us. Who would like to go first? Yep, go ahead. Councilmember Cooperman.
Thank you for the presentation. Just start by saying I have two daughters, both at Louisville Elementary. One is in third grade, where there are only 2 classes at the moment, and the other is in 5th grade, where there are 3 classes. Wanted to start off with a little question, which is just curious, in your charter schools, do you see any declines in enrollment or not so much?
Not as much at the charter schools. A lot of our charter schools have a threshold they can hit. So not near as many seats as what we're dealing with across the district. Okay. Charters, I will say, are not part of this discussion. They're managed by led by a different Board of Education or their own boards. So charters are not part of this presentation tonight.
Okay, that's fine. I was wondering, could you give us a little bit of a sense for how you do your projections and sort of what factors go into those?
Yeah, similar to what other districts use is student survival. So as students move up from grade levels, we continue to carry them through. And then we're looking at housing projections, et cetera, and we build all of that in. So, typically our projections are about, plus or minus 1%. So we've been very, very accurate. And if you look back at that presentation, you can see where the projection was. Mm-hmm. What we can't account for is something like a pandemic that occurred, which really impacted us. Some of the federal immigration stuff that we are seeing this year, which we couldn't account for. However, what we can see is we do know that we've got a lot smaller classes coming in and really large classes that are graduating out. And that, therefore, the underlying demographics that we're seeing. So,
okay, so maybe a larger question. Louisville, we are about to adopt a new comprehensive plan, which very likely will allow for considerably more housing in the city. And so I'm just curious, if I assume you've looked at that to some extent. And I'm wondering, how you think that will affect enrollments in Louisville. And then, I guess maybe relatedly, there has been a bunch of housing growth in parts of Superior or parts of Boulder. And, do you see those impacting enrollments?
I'll talk about it. So we have a large development in Erie, Colorado right now, and about 1,400 homes. And typically the yields that we have seen and used for decades, they're just not there. But again, the houses are starting out at 800,000. And the yields are about a quarter of what we're accustomed to. Typically, we would see about one elementary student for every 4 houses that are built. And we're about a quarter of that now based on what we're seeing in that development. Again, that goes back to the underlying demographics of what we're seeing. But affordability is a significant challenge. We do not see the same numbers coming out of apartments and condos and some of those other ones. It's really single family detached is where we see the biggest number of students that are coming out. And I'll just say affordable single family attached homes. So, we are paying attention to the comp plan. I think it's a lot about timing. It's going to take a while to build that out and actually start seeing some numbers. I think we're going to have to take action. I know we'll have to take action before then, but be responsive to what we see occur over the next decade or so. But we do appreciate your attention to that.
Sorry, could you just repeat those yield numbers again? I want to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah, used to be about 0.25 elementary students for every rooftop that we would see. Right now, it's about a quarter of that is what we're seeing. And we believe a lot of that is just because of the high cost of housing right now. If you start seeing houses that are starting out at 800,000 and above, young families are not coming in and moving in, or young families might be coming in, but they're not having kids until later, and they're having a lot fewer kids. So we're seeing both of those trends that are coming out.
Sorry, Josh, to interrupt.
Yep.
So you're saying it's 0.25 now for every 4 houses, or
No, it used to be 0.25 students, and one student for every 4 houses built, one elementary student for every 4 houses built. We're not, that was the old historical trend. We're not seeing that
so
right
now it's like a quarter of a student per 4 houses, or one per 16.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's truly about what we're seeing.
That's staggering.
Yep. And again, we're not seeing a lot of new development. So I hate to even say those numbers because this is really based on one subdivision that's being built right now. We're not seeing the numbers come out of that subdivision. But again, when you look at this across the nation, this is really what we're starting to see is, again, families are just waiting longer and they're having fewer kids.
To go next. Yes, Councilmember Tim.
I just have one more clarifying question from Councilmember Cooperman's comments. You mentioned something about condos versus townhomes versus single family homes. Can you repeat that again? And who occupies those?
Well, we see a lot more students come out of single family detached homes than we do condos and apartments and others. And we can get you those historical yields if you would like to see those from us. We'd be more than happy to provide those to you. But they're definitely much lower than we would see from a single family detached.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question. Do you think that your enrollment is impacted by people who are now homeschooling their kids? And so I have my oldest daughter out in California homeschools her son, but she sends him to a public homeschool for the extracurricular things, the art programs and music and things like that. Do you do anything like that for homeschoolers around here?
We have an online school, and there has been discussion about creating a homeschool program. We do track those numbers. So those numbers are reported to the Colorado Department of Education. You can actually find what's reported to called the CDE for homeschool numbers. I don't know how accurate it is. It is not required to report, But the numbers are not as high as what you might think they would be in our community, at least based on the data that we have. So,
Okay.
but there is some discussion as that could be a possibility to look at in the future to pull some students back in and provide that service, because we do know some families would like that.
And then the other question is, was the enrollment impacted by the Marshall Fire with families that had to move out of the area?
Enrollment definitely was impacted by the Marshall Fire, and a lot of those students, trying to remember, we had over, if I remember right, I don't want to quote numbers. We have tracked that and how many students left, and then of those students that came back, we're kind of at a break even on that. But some of that is new families that are moving into the new houses. So some of those families left, new families came in. So we've been tracking that. It looks like it's about a break even point at this time.
Okay.
We just started looking at, over the last year or so. And that, the trauma that has caused and families that have left and then that are new to the district. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I really appreciate the report. For what it's worth, I was a teacher for a while. I think there's an obvious sort of sadness to thinking about our school shrinking or a school shutting down. There's also what I'm hearing is a clear, excellent school system with just fewer kids in it. And so we're not failing our students, we're not failing our communities, we're not failing our neighbors. There are just fewer kids in Boulder Valley School District than there were. So trying to reframe the idea of, all right, great. So we want to continue to provide these amazing schools, but we might need 4 instead of 5 or 3 instead of 4 or in different areas, and trying to understand how that, what the narrative there is, that like, this isn't a sadness. It's a numbers game. And everyone's doing really well, and these teachers are really amazing. But I'm curious how many schools if there are any new schools opening or plan to be opening in BVSD. I know, like from a little sub thing, Lafayette's enrollment seems to be static, and Erie's is static or growing.
Lafayette, Erie, we're seeing a little bit of growth there.
Yeah.
We had a new school in the 2022 bond plan for the subdivision that I'm talking about. That's the Parkdale subdivision in Erie.
Yeah.
Currently, that project is on hold as we continue to monitor the enrollment out there. Right now, there are no other schools planning to be built in Boulder Valley School District.
And then I assume BVSD owns every school that you guys aren't renting buildings from people. And so there's consideration for, this will be part of the, sounds like almost a 2-year process of, what to do with properties and schools that maybe aren't necessary as far as facilities. Just think about facilities and like, well, we don't need 2 gyms. We don't need 2 of these facilities. So very curious to see like what that looks like and what we're thinking about for those those buildings. I'm not hearing any, and I'm saying it out loud, no concepts of busing populations from areas into these I grew up in the BVSD school district. I went to Flatirons Elementary School, Baseline Middle School, which doesn't exist anymore, Fairview High School. These fantastic schools that people want to get into. And so open enrollment was this opportunity. And now even with the open enrollment, we're not full, but there's not like some plan to help the larger state get kids to these facilities. The plan is more likely to close facilities that are underutilized, or is there any concept for increasing population from transportation?
So we can't transport outside our boundaries.
Okay.
So that's a state requirement that we can't do that. I will say the slide I talked about, we have pulled every available lever. Our out of district enrollment, so students that come from out of district that enroll into BVSD, is the highest it's ever been. And we did a number of different things. We had a commuter preference to come into Boulder Valley school districts. That's when I talk about, we have done everything we can because now we have the seats available, right? Before we didn't have to do that because our schools were all full.
Yep.
With the underlying demographic trends, we can no longer do that. So, if a school were to close or consolidate, would we have to increase transportation? I mean, we'd have to take that into consideration as we're thinking about options after we listen. What we do with facilities, et cetera, I'm not there yet because we're going to listen first. So if it comes down to one of those options that where we close a facility, that will be a discussion that we would have.
Yeah.
Is what would we do with those facilities?
And from your calendar, it doesn't look like fall of 26 is on the is a possibility for major decisions. It sounds like fall of 27 is where we might actually see some pretty stark
It'd be
choices.
this fall.
It would be this
It'd
fall.
be this fall, yeah. So on the
Interesting.
timeline, we're having engagement from the end of March through the end of May. And then in June through August, we'll develop options. And then our board would ultimately, they'll study in September and take action in October of 26.
That's my take action in October 26th.
Then all of the
about-
adjustments would go in August of 27.
That's what I understood.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yes, Councilmember Kurt.
Great, thanks. Just a quick question about the size of the classrooms.
Yep.
So, I mean, I understand that like the total school was smaller, but have we maintained the same number of classes just by making them a little smaller? So maybe instead of 25 kids with a teacher, you have 18 kids with a teacher.
Yeah. Well, sometimes small schools that happens, but then you might have one class that's 18 kids and another class that's, 29 kids. So no, we have not done that. These are the resources. Our resources have been stretched so thin across the same number of schools with fewer students. So if you think about, we're funded on a per pupil basis. So that's the challenging with the state funding model. So as schools get smaller, there's just fewer adults in a building.
So that's an interesting concept. And if you could speak to that a little bit to, I think, help community members understand for people who've had a 40% increase in their property taxes in the last 4 years. And so they look at it and say, wow, BVS, and it's the majority of their property tax goes to you. And so they're looking at it and saying, how could you have less money? And how could it be per student when it's actually per house, per property that's actually making those contributions? And you should have, by their account, right, more funds now than you did 5 years ago.
I'll be the first to say I'm not the chief financial officer. I should not be explaining this, but the amount of money we are able to collect is capped. So as assessed values go up, state funding comes down. However, we are capped at the total. So even though assessed values went up, we don't get additional funding. The state funding just goes down, so our local taxpayers pay more than what the state would pay.
Gotcha.
This is how that would work.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. That was easy.
Well,
I've got a couple of questions. Just to follow up on that last one. That's a question of the School Finance Act, right?
That's correct.
It's an equity issue statewide.
That is
try
correct.
to equalize.
Yep.
I think sometimes we think that just because we're in a more affluent area, our schools should be higher. And a lot of people do. A lot of people don't necessarily think about it that much.
Yep.
But it's good to understand that, I think, a little bit more as we go forward. And that act has routinely been challenged in the state Supreme Court over and over and over again.
And if you want additional information, I'm happy to provide that to you.
I think it would be good because I think the question that council, or at least one implication of the question that Councilmember Kern asked is that it's really good for public to understand that better as we go into all of this stuff. The one question I had wondered about is, it may be a little bit more in the weeds. We are on the demand side, if you will, seeing fewer kids, and you've talked about that. On the supply side, there are a lot of teachers, I gather, who are in the process of retiring, the sort of baby boom snake, or what is it, the bulging snake continuing to go forward. I don't know whether that makes much of a difference in the end to all these decisions. But having, I mean, there's a certain group of folks available to teach. If there are fewer teachers available, it would seem like, well, I guess I'd be interested, one, if that's even true, and two, what impact does it have in any of these considerations?
You know, it's to be honest, Mayor, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I will say we attract the best of the best when it comes from educators. So we really don't have a hard time hiring teachers. Much different than some of the rural parts of the state and some of the stuff that you probably read. But in Boulder Valley School District, we get the best of the best, and we're proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, presumably with consolidation is, well, again, I shouldn't make assumptions.
Yeah.
If and when schools are consolidated, is that going to end up affecting the number of teachers that are necessary to run them?
You know,
things?
it should not. And that's what we're going to be working with educators. And, you know, as we think about, we're still educating 26,600 students, right? And we're really proud of that. And you still need the same number of educators educating those students, just in fewer buildings. I mean, that's what this really comes to. So as we're working forward, we're going to be working good or tightly with our staff. And this is one district that takes care of its employees. And we're really proud of that. So we will do our best to make sure that everyone continues to do the work that they continue to do. They're doing it great.
And I very much appreciate that. I think
Yeah.
all of us, you know, many of us moved to this area in
Yeah.
part because of how strong schools were. And so, and, you know, certainly, my two kids were educated just phenomenally well, in my view, and a lot of others, I don't hear very many people
Yeah.
saying, wow, this is completely bad school. I mean, there just aren't many people around who are complaining about that. But the final question is how, I'm looking back at the community engagement structure, how are you involving parent-teacher organizations in these discussions?
So we'll be reaching out, like I said, communication is going to be flowing in the next few weeks on, you know, how do we engage our families? How do we engage PTOs or SACs or school accountability committees? And then also, how do we reach our community that don't have kids in the schools, right? So, you know, that we might be asking for your help to help us think through that, because we reach our families quite well, but we do struggle reaching, you know, those that don't have students anymore. So we might be asking for some help there. But no, that, and then you know, so we're going to have these larger regional meetings to build some understanding, to get our families and our community to understand the trade-offs that we're going to be looking at. And then really some targeted focus groups. And that will probably be more with our school accountability committees, some of our district accountability committees, and then, you know, PTOs, PTAs, how do we engage with them as we move this work forward? So it's going to be a lot of work. But again, I will just emphasize that this is very deliberate, to listen first, understand the values, the trade-offs, and then move forward. This is probably the most difficult work a school district has to do.
Yeah. If, you know, when you get to that point,
Yep.
And maybe before you get to that point, I think, I'm not going to say I speak for all of us, but I think we're very interested in helping you be in touch with our community and linking people together who aren't necessarily on your radar screen or aren't easy to reach. Other questions, council members? Yep.
Just one more quick comment, talking about reaching people that don't have kids in the schools. I'm one of them, but I have 4 kids who are all graduates of everything K to high school, and then CU Boulder. CU Boulder sends them all alumni notifications and requests for funding. Could you do that for your alumni?
That's a great question and suggestion, and we will take that. And we want you to be part of the engagement process.
Okay.
Any other questions? We really appreciate
Yeah.
your coming to, maybe one last thing is, does staff have any questions while you're here? We appreciate you coming by, and this is, it's tough news to hear, and as Councilmember Dickinson said, but we appreciate that time and effort.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks. I don't know that there's any further direction that we need to provide. It's just getting information, but that's very, I think very, very helpful information to have. Next item is our council work plan adoption. Staff's going to introduce this in more detail in a minute. So the public knows, and I don't think council really needs to be reminded, but we have spent an enormous amount of time going through and tweaking the process for coming up with the work plan. It's really important to what we do. We spend a lot of time fitting things into it. There's plenty of things that fall outside it that we end up having to deal with from year to year. But what my hope is today is we're not adding items, but if there are any items that any of the members of council can think of to whittle down and tighten, strengthen the work plan, that may be worth having at least a little bit of a discussion. But with that, why don't we leave it to you to open it up?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm Sam Fox, your Deputy City Manager, and I'm going to go through a brief overview of your work plan and how we got here today. So our purpose today is to review and adopt the 2026 Council Work Plan. Just a reminder, looking at our flight path analogy, we're here in purple and blue in your strategic goals and priority action items. That's what we're doing with the Council Work Plan. A few considerations. I think it's important to remember this is not representative of all of the work that Council does. The work plan really reflects policy-related work that's above and beyond day-to-day that Council is going to focus on. As we can always say, your work plan should be achievable, keeping in mind capacity considerations, which you heard from the leadership team. And it's important that we continue to maintain alignment with the charter, the community survey, comprehensive plan, and the 2026 budget. So our approach in 2026, we had our first conversation about this in May, where we reviewed the 2025 work plan and council confirmed continuing with your priorities and lenses in 2026. That information was then used to shape the 2026 budget. We also had presentations from the department heads in July about challenges, opportunities, and capacity. During this time, staff used council direction to draft the work plan. In January, we had a follow-up meeting where we went through a variety of decision points around the work plan. In February, we had a council and ELT workshop where you heard capacity updates from council. And tonight we have your draft work plan. Just to show you on a timeline, one of the things we've been keeping in mind here are the budget deadlines and the comprehensive plan coming. So with that, I'm going to briefly review what is on your current 2026 work plan. In the economic vitality priority, you have the comprehensive plan front and center, EVC policy recommendations, targeted development code and process amendments, development code rewrite, Sundance Film Festival, and McCaslin Corridor. In core services, you've got a bit of a lengthy list here. We've got the PROS long range plan and trails plan, website update, wastewater treatment plant expansion, transportation infrastructure, advocacy, 27-28 budget and CIP, Excel franchise agreement, core services conversations, strategic planning, historic preservation tax, park and open space initiatives, environmental sustainability initiatives, cultural services strategic planning initiative, consideration of potential charter amendments, and then a few things that we added through your conversations the last couple of weeks: image and video capture policies, funding option consideration, impact fee evaluation, and community engagement framework. In safety, we have building the foundation, which has traditionally been study sessions for information, preparedness efforts, ODM buy-in and implementation, cell coverage, and traffic safety. And for housing, we have potential city-initiated rezoning, potential property acquisition or project contribution for the creation of affordable housing, Prop 123 compliance, development such as consideration of expedited review code or process changes for affordable housing, housing plan implementation, and affordable housing strategic framework and funding prioritization. Tonight, our recommendation to council is to finalize and adopt this work plan, recognizing that it's a living document. It will flex, and should priorities or resources change, staff is happy to engage with council about adjustments to your work plan.
Thank you very much for that succinct piece. Are there first any council questions of staff? Yes, Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I'm just curious what happened with the need for the council to be working on wildfire conflagration issues and the WUI code implementation. None of this is stated anywhere. I would definitely call that a core service requirement for the safety of the community, and was expecting it to be there.
I would have that included in preparedness. I believe it is addressed in the description for preparedness. If it's not, it's certainly the intention that it's part of that safety item.
I'd like it if we can, I mean, there's a lot of other things that are specifically defined. I'd like it if that was one of the items that was specifically called out and defined. I think it has a high enough priority for the community and the council that we do that.
Do you have a specific
Happy to do that.
piece in the work plan that you're referring to, or what page in the packet?
No, I do not have that.
Okay, do we have that?
I'm hearing that I would be happy to put it under safety and address the items that we're working on already.
Council members? I see some nods and not others. Do we agree with making a special?
It's not an ad, it's just a clarification.
What Samuel was saying is that the intention is for it to be under preparedness. I'm just saying having a clarifying line item. If we're adding cell coverage, I would say that this rises to that level or more. And so I think it should be specifically called and defined as a priority for council to work on in 26.
Councilmember Dickinson, did you are folks in agreement with that? Not as an ad, but a clarification or cross-reference in some respects. It's to emphasize it. Okay, looks like that is okay. Are there other comments, questions? Yes, Councilmember Hefner.
I just want to amplify the paragraph on page 1 that says that this oversubscribes the city on special projects above and beyond day-to-day work. I count 36 items on our work plan. There's only 12 months in a year, and we have a lot of regular business to conduct also. So I say that without a specific proposal in mind of what to cut, but just that this is more ambitious than we're ever probably going to be able to do, and maybe that's fine, but I think we should go in eyes open that this is a pretty long list.
Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Cooperman.
I'm hoping that we can call out the updates to the inclusionary housing ordinance in the description for one of the existing items, either in the housing section or in the development code section under economic vitality. Again, I think this is in process, and I think it's important enough just to call it out in the description.
Sure, I see that as another clarification item and happy to make that update if council is supportive.
Again, not an ad, but a clarification. Okay.
And then
Is everybody good with that? It'd be nice to get nodded heads, just so I can, pardon me? No, I understand. I'm just, for my purposes and for staff, it would be helpful. Okay, I see that heads nodding. Okay. Other comments? Yep, go ahead.
I just had two other little clarifications. Maybe Kurt can weigh in on the first one. With one of the items is the wastewater treatment plant expansion. I was wondering if we should call out whether or not there will be, or we've talked about at the finance committee sort of possibly doing some work on the city side in coordination with the Red Tail expansion. I'm just wondering if we should call that out in the description or if that's probably not going to happen this year.
I think that's built in just kind of to our routine conversations we'll have with finance committee and the council on rate setting. So it's not like, I don't see it as an extra thing, just a subtopic.
Okay, that's fine too. And then the last one is just under the Excel franchise agreement. Again, in the description or something, I think it might be helpful to say something about you know, I think we should sort of strategize around whether there are things we want to ask of Excel and not just do a straight, or maybe not just do a straight renewal. You know, are there any kind of resilience things or sustainability things that we might be able to ask for? And so as we work on that agreement, just think, I think we should be looking at those options. And if there are options, then strategizing around those. So that was just something I thought about calling out explicitly.
To clarify, is that going to be something that we'll deal with when we deal with, I mean, isn't that going to be part and parcel of dealing with the franchise agreement? I appreciate your naming a couple of them. I don't know all of the possibilities. Yes, Councilmember Hefner.
I understand where you're going. I think I agree. This is a list of things that we're going to consider, and I don't know that we need to get into the sort of detailed strategy for each one within the work plan document.
Yeah. All right. And on the second one, just so I wanted to get just an understanding of whether we're settling on a change or whether first you're comfortable in your request to not include it. I don't know where you're headed. That it's okay not to include. Okay. All right. Well, with that, unless there anything else, we need to go to public comments.
First up is Susan Liu.
Hello, I have a quick comment that, you don't really make a distinction between basic services versus core services. And it looks like you've thrown everything but the kitchen sink into core services, including wastewater and Excel, for example. And the reason why it's important to understand the distinction is basic services are things your residents can't live without. They are basic to what government should be providing. So I just want you to be aware that some of those things that you've thrown into core services are more important than others. And on your list there, wastewater and Excel would be two of mine. The other thing is, I noticed buried deep in the document is you're looking at fussing around with the street index. Now, you might be able to lower the street index number some, but I would hate for us to go back to the way we were, where we consider streets not something that we need to work on and not something that's really a line item or something we really care about because it's included in everything else, because it's not. When it's not a line item, it's not included. And many of you weren't here, but we let the streets deteriorate so badly a decade ago that we had to spend millions to do repairs. And the idea of having a street index is that you keep the street so that you don't have to do $1 million, $2 million repair a mile. And so I'm going to be watching very carefully what you do with the street index. So, and then going back to Councilor Kern's request for clarification on preparedness, I would suggest it's not just wildfire. It's also flooding. It's hazardous materials from a train derailment. I mean, it's a tornado. It needs to be, you need to understand it's not just wildfire. It's more than that. So thank you. Those are my comments, and I'll be watching to see how you guys manage to implement this gigantic plan, which in my opinion, you've bitten off more than you can chew. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. Do we have any other comments? Okay. All right, then. Council discussion about any of these items? Okay. Yes, Councilmember After.
I just think to the question of chewing, I mean, it would be good for us to have some discussion about how do we prioritize this and what are we expecting of the city manager and staff in terms of delivery of a work plan that's frankly much larger than we could accomplish during council meetings, and certainly then I think staff can accomplish with the resources that we have.
Yeah, it's a good question. Do you have any thoughts about how to kick that off?
I'm hoping for a brilliant solution from our brilliant city manager.
We've had these internal discussions. It is a very comprehensive and lengthy work plan. I think the good, bad thing about this is we are already working on a lot of these items. And so as long as there's patience in terms of delivery and that things, as Sama noted in the presentation, will need to flex as other items pop up that we can't anticipate. And but the city of Louisville and council and staff, I mean, have such high goals and such a high desire to provide quality services to the community. This work plan is a reflection of that. And staff really tries hard to attain and meet these goals. And I see us continue to do that. Through the budget process, we will need to have discussions about the resources that are required to help deliver this. And then also, like I said, just council having patience in terms of delivery and recognizing that a lot of these are multi-year projects that won't necessarily be completed in 2026. And so you will see that sometimes things are delayed or some things advance depending upon need and what needs to take place at the time. I don't have a magic answer for you other than patience and also just recognizing that we are already working on a lot of these things. And as these are overarching goals, as we get into specific projects, there's a lot of projects that we do that fit into these categories. And so just recognizing for what they are.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I share your concern. I appreciate your comments. I think, one thing that gives me some confidence, if you will, is just, thinking about who's taking on the historic preservation tax. It's not the same person who's taking on the parks and open space initiatives. It's not the same person who's taking on the cultural services. It's not the same person who's doing the pros, but pros and parks and open space. So you start looking at, okay, what does Kurt's world look like next year? And which of these, I'm just looking at the core services page right now, but which of these are really falling into different people's buckets. And so we have a big staff, we have a lot of departments, and we have a lot of different things. So I see all these lists, but I think the reason it's let's just not do cultural services strategic planning initiative this year. It's like, well, that doesn't free Kurt up or Rob up or or Adam up, right? So it's like, right. I think we can make progress in all these things, and I think some of these are going to be multi-year projects, and I appreciate your comments, city manager, of just being patient that these are things we're working on and these are things that are coming back to us, and we're not necessarily going to finish everything, and certainly some things could even be bumped to next year. They will. That's the reality, right? Is that some things will end up not getting accomplished, and that might be okay. And then some things are critical to get accomplished this year, and they will. That's what I've always experienced here. So I appreciate all things on here, and I appreciate council not trying to add anything tonight that's substantial. But I'm really excited for the year in front of us.
Comments? Yes, Councilmember. Or member, go ahead.
Just in summary, I mean, I echo the concerns about the number of items we have on the work plan. I think my takeaway from your comment, city manager, and correct me if I misinterpreted, is that tonight we don't necessarily need to go through and prioritize and strike items or whatnot, but just to approach the upcoming year with kindness and flexibility, and that should be sufficient for us to begin to make progress on this work plan. Is that a good takeaway?
That's a great takeaway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to add just a couple of things to this. I very much appreciate staff's response to a very difficult, but also very penetrating question. I sort of started this by suggesting, gee, we shouldn't add anything. Yay, council, did a good job on that. I think council or former council member Lou raised a very good point about just how packed this is, and everybody in council, and I suspect the public who has looked at this agrees. I think what I take some solace in is, number one, that it's a living document and that it needs work as we go forward. And that's not just staff. We have still a lot of hard decisions that we're going to have to make this year. And in terms of the core service, basic services set of issues, these are all, some of them, not perhaps what was described as the basic services, but many of these are quality of life issues for the community. We're going to have very difficult choices to make about the level of service. Yes, we have something that we're going to provide, but we may not be able to provide it quite at the level that we want. The alternative, of course, is that alternative, I would say, providing everything to a less than stellar level, and making choices allows us potentially to deliver at a higher level fewer items. And that's something that I think we're going to be faced with over and over and over again. And I'm going to be counting on council, not only staff, to make those bigger policy decisions, because it's not staff's duty to tell us what the priorities are. It's ours. And that's an accountability that we all share. And it's the hardest part about doing our job. I mean, it's the most central. And so we've got a 2-year budget coming. Everybody's excited, I think, about addressing that, but we've got a reckoning, or a series of reckonings, that we're going to have to make, and they're not going to be very easy. But I take some heart in that, we can do that kindly, I think, or as kindly as we can, but we have to do it with a sharp pencil in mind, or in hand, and in cooperation with our constituents as well as staff. And so, any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'd move we adopt the 2026 work plan as it appears in the packet with the amendments offered by council members Kern and Cooperman.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Our final matter is discussion and direction on traffic, particularly via Appia and Polk Dahlia. This one is got history, which we can talk a little bit about in the staff. I think staff's going to talk about that. And I guess the only thing I want to say about this one to frame it is there has been an enormous amount of work that's been done by staff along with the community. I think we all appreciate that there are strong feelings about these topics, and there is a whole lot of good faith by staff and by council and by the community. But that's something that we need to continue. Everybody's trying really hard to address these things. We got good new data that I think our Director of Public Works, Kurt Coher, is going to help to illuminate us here. I told him that his slide deck was the most action-packed slide deck that I have seen in all the years being on council. So, and it's well worth. What I mean by that is it's one of those things. Is it takes some digesting, and I hope that the public, as well as we tonight, do that over time, and that's going to be. I'm going to serve that up. Go ahead.
So Mayor, I was going to go ahead and start this presentation. Yes. So first of all, Kurt has put a tremendous amount of work into this presentation. His staff has done a lot in terms of collecting data and putting it into the most technical presentation I think I've seen, in terms of getting into the details of the traffic engineering behind it. So why are we here? As we look ahead to the potential to repave Polk Dahlia this year and to repave via Appia in 2027 or 2028, we need to understand what we're going to put back once it's repaved. And as we're approaching the 2027-2028 budget process, this is our opportunity to get feedback and to understand what council and the community's desire is in terms of what we budget for, more specifically the Via Appia. To manage expectations, this has been a divisive and contentious process. We know that once Via Appia was restriped from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, there was a big reaction from the community, some supportive, some not supportive. And we also know that Public Works took the brunt of a lot of criticism for what took place. I give them a lot of credit for bringing forward a project that attempted to address many things. I give council credit for being willing to move forward with a project in which you're willing to try out things to see what works. And part of tonight's presentation is to give you feedback on how it worked. As we evaluate next steps, unfortunately, I think that we're placing council in a position that you're still going to have to make decisions that don't please all of the community. Whatever we move forward with, because we've heard, pros and cons, people that like the reduction down to 2 lanes, 1 lane each direction, people that wish it would go back to the way it was. And so as we move forward, just recognizing we're not going to be able to support all of the desires of all of the community. What are the goals? At the end of the day, our goals are to create a safe and efficient corridor that serves a variety of needs. Pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles, also keeping in mind that Via Appia is an important route for evacuations. And so, we keep that in the back of our mind in terms of what moves forward. Are things that we put in place mountable by a vehicle if you have to evacuate? And before Kurt starts his presentation, he and I both have talked about looking at the bigger picture. We have a desire to, as we get better settled into Boulder ODM, having a new fire chief, where we actually get into practice of doing evacuation drills within the community to Susan Liu's point, not just for potential of fire, but for the variety of hazards that could occur in Louisville, whether it's a train derailment or other issues. And so this is a long-term goal for us as city staff. And so we are keeping that in mind as we're evaluating traffic improvements throughout the city. So with that, Kurt, I'd like to turn it over to you for the presentation. Kurt has assured me he's not going to go through all 67 slides. I was excited, as I know you all are, to see it, but he is ready to present. So thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks for all that ramp up, everybody. Just one more line of credit. I want to credit the city staff that have worked hard for years on this. They're sitting here right now. We've got some experienced players with us and some new players, but Cameron Folks is our city engineer. Jordan Jeffries is our assistant city engineer. Jonathan Williams is new to us from the town of Erie. He's our transportation senior civil engineer. We also have consultants that are supporting us on the roundabout evaluations. Olson Associates, we have Troy Russ and Matt Olson. And so just want to welcome everybody and give credit where credit's due. I generally just show up, run solo, and buffer these guys from the fun we have here. So thank you, staff and consultants. The presentation is designed to jump around. Everyone's going to have a certain area on Via Appy in their head that's important to them. And so instead of just scrolling around Google Maps all night long, like I've got specific slides. So I'm going to cover data and some safety and stats, and then I'm going to pause. And then depending on where you want to go, then we're going to take it from there. So we're not going to hit all the slides unless you want to. Just some context. These are things we've heard through the process in traffic calming over the last several years. There's things that are helpful. There's things that are unhelpful. So things that are not helpful is when someone shows up and says, I always see this happen. We just know always doesn't exist out there. This is all a probability thing. If someone really is going to double down that it's always happening, I'm happy to put a dash cam in their car, and we'll see how it always happens to them, and then maybe we're missing something. Never, I never see this happen. There's never anyone out there that's just not true. We have data. So again, we have people out there on bike lanes and crossing the street. I don't know why the screen's being glitchy, but it is. I apologize. Fear mongering. It's only a matter of time before someone dies, or a kid dies, or a dog dies. Absolutely. Statistically, we have millions of miles traveled and people crossing streets, and at some point, something will happen. And so our job is to minimize the amount of opportunity for that happen. And then if it does happen, minimize the amount of injury or damage that will happen. So it may be that like cars will get in an accident, but it's like a fender bender and no one got hurt. It's just property damage. That's much different than getting in an accident with a person and then that person severely injured or it's a fatality. So expectations, we want to know what the council's expectations are, the resident expectations. My experience through the process the last few years is some of the loudest people will show up in these meetings and talk. And then I'll have an equal number of people send me an email after the fact, or just come to me off to the side after the meeting and be like, hey, I really liked it, but I'm just kind of uncomfortable speaking up. It's gotten a little too serious for me. And then what does the future look forward? We touched on that, but let's just think about today. What is typically happening? Is it often? Is it minimal? Is this normal? And then like, what is that overall risk? So I'm going to pause there because I want to back into what you want to talk about tonight. And so these are just, I want to go around the room and see from each of you what you're hearing. What do you think still needs solved? Do you have concerns? Is there public outreach needed? What does that look like? If we do it, what do you want me to go talk to people about? And what are you expecting to get out of their answers? Harmony? Divisiveness? I don't know. And then just what are your principles for guiding our transportation network? What are your guiding values? You know, an example could be, I want an auto-centric network. I want to be on autopilot. I don't want to think when I'm driving. That's okay to say. That's what you believe. Or I want a blended network where cars, bikes, and people have to compromise. Everyone's got to think. Everyone's got to be patient and wait their turn in line to get out or cross or whatever. So like, we're just curious from you because I think we've hit a lot of low-hanging fruit. And now we're getting into tweaks and fine lines here, and we don't want to read minds and guess wrong. So I'll just start next to Diana, Judy, Councilwoman Kern, and then we'll just go around the room, and I'll take notes. Okay, Dietrich, all you.
Sure. I'll just try and go in order here. I mean, are you looking for like specifics?
Just whatever's on your mind around these questions, I want to write it down. And there's
Yeah.
going to be some themes that pop out that we'll talk about.
So I'll tell you what I'm hearing, and I hear more about Polk Dahlia because that's my ward and I live there and drive on it every day. I've heard almost near unanimous support for the speed bumps and raised crosswalks. I would say it's about almost evenly divided on the advisory bike lanes. On Via Appia, I mostly hear positive support because I have little kids and have lots of friends with little kids and young families. And the thing I generally hear is that it feels safer to cross than it did with 2 lanes each direction, and that the driving experience is similar. I know there will be people who have heard different things, but that's what I've heard. To the extent there are problems that still need to be solved, to me, they're mostly communication problems. I think there is communication work yet to be done if we keep the advisory bike lanes and thinking about some edge cases like Uber drivers and Amazon drivers and people who don't drive it every day, who maybe are going to drive it once or twice ever, and how, what's optimal for those people, or are they just unreachable? Via Appia, I mean, to the extent I hear things that still need to be solved, it's passing. It's inappropriate passing because the whole wide street is still there. It's just paint. My chief concern and what I said in our ward meeting is that and I think we can say this, the city of Louisville is always going to be committed to safety and ensuring a safe transportation network, subject to the various caveats you just gave, that accidents do happen and you can't, really realistically expect to eliminate them entirely. But I think safety first is sort of a watchword. I don't think we need a tremendous amount of additional public outreach unless we're proposing some radical new configuration, in which case I think we do. Principles and guiding values. I think the 2019 Transportation Master Plan is actually pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And I think it captures a lot of what we're trying to accomplish, which is all ages, all abilities, a network that's safe, a network that's efficient, but where, 6-year-olds feel safe. And I forget what the age cutoffs are, but
eight to 80. So
8
all
to
ages
80.
and abilities 8 to 80. And that's just kind of the cognitive abilities of the users and if they're mature enough to navigate on there.
And certainly, it's right now it's a compromise that is not perfect for anyone. Like, there are issues riding a bike, there are issues driving a car, there are still issues crossing the street. To me, where we're at right now is like a fair balance of those issues. Maybe there are tweaks and improvements to be made, but I think we've sort of done a reasonable job, also understanding there's not unlimited money, of balancing the different priorities. I think that's what I've got. I think that's my input.
Yeah. So I've knocked a lot of doors in Ward 1 twice since we've done the restriping work. Both times they're, definitely heard. It's been a theme that there are people who are unhappy with what we've done on both corridors. I would definitely say the second time around, I heard that less. I usually try to, when I've heard that feedback, I try to probe, like, what is it that you don't like about the changes? At least in Ward 1, what I've heard the most is I'm trying to turn left onto Via Appia, and it takes longer than it used to. That was the most common complaint, I would say. I've heard a little bit about people still feeling like it could be easier to walk across Via Appia, but not a whole lot about that. Again, I mean, I wasn't knocking doors on the other side of Via Appia, so when people in Ward 1 talk about Polk Dahlia, I think the people who don't like it, the main thing they cite is really just like confusion or like not knowing what to do on the road. Yeah. So yeah, where would I go next? Yeah. So, from the data in the presentation, it sounds like, there might be occasions where people trying to turn left onto Via Appia are sometimes facing longer waits, but it's not, the data suggests it's not really necessarily any worse than it was before. So I told people that I would inquire about that. I'm not, so I don't know if that needs to be solved or not, but that's one thing I'm interested in. sort of skipping to the bottom and then maybe coming back, in terms of principles and guiding values, I am really interested in sort of everything we can do to get more people to not drive and to rather walk or bicycle or some other similar means of transportation. And yeah, so the whole gamut of things we can do to encourage that is what I'm interested in primarily. Um, I don't necessarily think that we need more public outreach, unless, as Dietrich said, we are making some notable change to these two roads. Yeah, I don't know. My concerns, I don't know. I think it still could be, we could try to find ways to make it still easier for people to walk across Via Appia, especially at certain places. And yeah, maybe I'll stop there.
So in an effort to not be repetitive, I'll just say, I think Councilmember Hefner very nicely summarized my thoughts and what I've been hearing. I'll add just a few additional pieces of information. I feel like I maybe have heard a little bit more about Polk Dahlia in this, people not liking the striping on Polk Dahlia. The crossing specifically at Pine in Via Appia, I've heard some feedback about. I think there's a number of high school students that go to that area for a bus stop, and there's safety concerns there for them accessing that. And then as far as guiding principles and values, like I said, Councilmember Hefner really nice summarized, my thoughts on that as well. And I'll just add to that piece, evacuation as well. Some concerns have been expressed and continue to be expressed about, whatever we choose to do with Via Appia to make sure that it can be used effectively as an evacuation route. I've heard some folks say they think the way it is right now does not lend itself to be a safe evacuation route. I've heard others say it is safe. You didn't put up any buffers or barriers. It's simply education and practicing what the evacuation is going to look like. So I'll just stop there.
Thanks. I'm hearing a lot of what we've heard before. I think what I would say about Polk Dahlia in particular is just a little more background. When I was, of all things, kind of checking out the route and informing people of the route of the Monarch parade, it went down Polk Dahlia. So I took the liberty of asking everybody about this issue. And there are only some of the people who use it, right? But they certainly have I think, a good sense of what they hear, how safe they feel. And I heard very much a similar comment about that. I think that Councilmember Hefner said that people love the bumps, maybe even put another bump probably closer to Pine. And they didn't like the striping too much. It just continued to be confusing for people who are newcomers and that sort of thing. I think the problems that I see needing to be solved are, some of those big left turns onto Via Appia, particularly. I don't hear an awful lot about Via Appia, some of the remnants of the last discussion, but clearly still having trouble at especially Pine and Via Appia. I think we continue to hear comments from the perhaps areas where there were, fire survivors concerned about access. And I think some of that may be just information about how we do evacuations, and trying to get, I think, past the paint in some way that actually satisfies, to an extent, the people who really did have kind of traumatic experiences coming out of there during the fire. And I don't think we want to repeat that. I don't know that we need an awful lot of public outreach. I really do appreciate, I didn't mean to be really joking about this presentation, but there's a lot of really good information that's there. I think it provides a great deal of what we need to make decisions. And just skipping down to principles and guiding values. I mean, you want efficiency, but I am really maybe just bumping back up. What are my concerns? My concerns are just generally, I hear this from other mayors. I hear this in Washington because they're very concerned about it in making grants and so forth, is people are driving too fast. That is a nationwide problem. Now, I don't know. It is, I don't know what to do about that, given that it's a nationwide problem. I know we're trying to do it. I appreciate it, but I think I really was appreciative of the data on South or via Appia, that things were better on the ends, still challenging in the middle, and I really would like to maybe solve that problem, slow people down a little bit in the middle. So the guiding values are ever again safety. There's one slide in here that talks about something being as far as staff goes, a closed issue. Council may want to talk about it, but I understand that the issue is safety. And, it is something that we've got to drive. I know that it drives you. So.
Okay, I will agree with what's already been said. I am happy that the speed on Via Appia in particular has gone down. I'm also wondering, has the number of vehicles gone down, especially on Polk Dahlia? I've heard from the neighbors that there isn't as much traffic on Polk Dahlia. There aren't people using that as the cut through from Pine to get downtown to Cherry or wherever. And so that's a good thing. I think it was never intended to be a shortcut through a private neighborhood. And the evacuation, I like that there are a lot of concerns about evacuation, and it's not just having the 4 lanes open and available for evacuation. It's also being able to turn left, like out of the neighborhoods, out of the rec center parking lot, off Pine, whatever, being able to get onto the road to evacuate. On Polk Dahlia, I will say the biggest thing I've heard is confusion. Nobody knows how to use the street. Do I drive down the middle and then if a car is coming, I go over into the bike lane? Or, so if your intention is to have people driving in the bike lane, maybe put a stripe down the middle so they know it's still a 2-lane road, just to try and get some of the confusion out. Education is the biggest problem with both of them, but mainly with Polk Dahlia. People don't know how to drive it. So other than that, I think it's been doing a great job. And it has brought the their speed down on Via Appia, hasn't it?
Yes, in some areas the speed has come down on Via Appia, and
Okay.
one area has actually gone up. But we'll talk about that.
The center
Mhm.
by Pine. And
Yeah.
and Pine is the intersection on Via Appia that I hear all the complaints about. Takes too long to cross. I can't walk across. I can't, whatever it is. So.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about the other 500 streets. I'm not sure how long this meeting's going to go, but generally, you know, I definitely want to stay at the policy level of the transportation plan that, you know, we want our community, my neighbors, my family, we want safe streets. We want streets that kids can bike and walk on, and that it's multimodal. We have a better bike path system through our community than almost anywhere in the world, well, country. It's remarkable, and a lot of those paths cross streets, and people really value our paths and our open spaces and our parks and being able to get around with scooters and bikes and walking and jogging and all those things. So I think from a policy perspective, please keep working to implement the transportation plan and make sure that whenever given the opportunity to put down new striping, when you repave and it's time to stripe, that we do things like, we're not talking about Pine. Everybody loves Pine. I haven't heard one complaint about Pine ever. It's a phenomenal restriping. Keep doing that, right? And so Via Appia came with a lot of attention, and I think part of it was communication. You told people we're going to have a road diet. Don't tell me I need a diet for my road. That's stupid. Why are you making my road less than it was? But it carries 20,000 vehicles per day capacity, and there are only 8. So what are we talking about? Like, it is a fine road. So from what I will say, the only thing that, you know, hasn't been said quite is when visitors come to town, and I'm lucky enough to have people come visit pretty frequently. They're like, "How's council?" There's stuff, and it inevitably, we're driving around and I'm like, "Oh, you got to see Via Appia." And I drive them on Via Appia, and they're like, "I literally don't understand. What is the problem?" I'm like, "I know, it's funny." I drive them on Polk, and they're like, "What the hell is this road? I've never seen anything like it. I do not understand it." And I explain it, and they're like, "Okay, it's really weird." So those are the responses I get from people who are from out of town. They literally do not understand the issue of the Via Appia. And then I explain it. I'm like, "Well, you know, it used to be 2 lanes, it used to be like this, these are the complaints." It's like, "Okay, I don't get it." And and I try to explain Polk, and they're like, "Okay, I don't get it. I don't know why they did that." So that's the reactions I hear from my neighbors. I don't really hear anything anymore about either. It's pretty unusual for me to hear about those streets today. But I think it's just really important. Like, I don't have a degree as a civil engineer or an urban planner or a data analyst. So I have that same experience of every time I take Pine up to Via Appia, I take a left within 10 seconds. Every time. That doesn't matter. My experience doesn't matter. I'm one human. What we need is data. We need science. We need engineers. We need people who understand the macro level and not the individual experience level. So I understand there are other people that get to that intersection, and every time it's scary to cross. Every time they're delayed. Every time it's tough. And that's their experience. I'm also not going to do policy around that experience. So I think you guys are doing a great job. I think you can leave everything as is. You can put everything back. You can put a stripe down the middle of Polk Dahlia. You can change the way you do advisory bike. I think it's all fine. What I'm noticing is I hear all the time about like Via or Polk Dahlia. It's like a game of chicken, but it's a game of chicken that every single driver is willing to lose. No one has had a head-on collision because like, nope, I think this is my lane. Everyone goes, "This is really weird." They slow down and they go away and like, "This is the worst road I've ever seen. What's happening?" But they don't run into each other because we're humans. And again, this was happening when I got back from Rwanda, and the rule in Rwanda, honestly, was don't hit anyone else. That was the rule of the road. So you could do kind of whatever you want, just don't hit anyone else. And it was unbelievable how traffic would move through that town, that city, really pretty efficiently with the rule of, well, if I'm in front, you get to wait, and then you get in behind me and you wait for me, and everyone just don't hit anyone. And so I see Polk Dahlia as like, yeah, just don't hit a bike, don't hit a car, don't hit anyone. And everyone's like, this is unsettling and I don't like it. But it seems to be working. So, you know, this is one of those things where like, as an individual, I think it's fine. I think we've heard enough from the public that it's probably the wrong road design, probably needs to be different. There's still, I think, enough negative about Polk and Dahlia that probably needs to go. And one thing, the last thing I'll say is, when I go to Phoenix, Arizona, there are cars called Waymo, full self-driving taxis. I don't understand how Waymo, not that it's here, would drive on that road. And so when you have a car that follows rules and you put stripes that are weird, it doesn't know, right? It wants to drive in the middle. So as we get more and more cars that are self-driving, even just while someone's in it, self-driving, that car is not happy with that road. That car wants to be in the middle, and we don't want it to be. So we've designed something that automated cars don't know how to deal with. And so self-driving delivery, self-driving taxis, self-driving other things, I think that road is a problem. And I think a yellow stripe down the middle might fix it. But I still think that car would probably just stop. Be like, I don't know what to do now. So anyways, that's all my thoughts. But thank you for all your work. And I am sorry about all the vitriol from a couple of years ago. That was a rough moment for your department, and I appreciate you guys sticking it out.
I'm letting Kurt catch up. Chris was looking at me. I know. I'm impressed, actually. It's amazing. So how many pages are we up to? So I'll start with what I'm hearing. And like Councilmember Cooperman, I've heard a change. And I went from hearing around 75% of my community members absolutely not liking the comments of it's just paint, and did not like the fact that the 4 lanes went down to 2. Everybody that I have talked to has liked the fact that the bike lanes are wider, and that's for bike safety, not just for the cyclists, but for people in cars too. I agree, they don't want to hit anyone. So they like that there's more space for a cyclist to be. And ideally, it's, a responsible cyclist, not like a gang of 5 kids on an e-bike, of e-bikes, which is actually what I see quite frequently, especially in the summer, in that lovely new wide bike lane. And we don't have that bike lane designation on Pine Street. You were saying you like Pine. So the same group of 5 e-bike kids ride right down the middle of the lane, because there isn't even a designation to stay to the right. So cars literally travel behind the e-bikes doing 20 or 25 miles an hour, or 40. Yeah. Then they're getting ahead of the cars, right? So that's what I heard when this first happened. And you were hearing some of the same things. Now I am going through and I'm hearing a lot more people saying that, it's not as bad as I thought. With some tweaks, we can do it. But I'll tell you, it's still at least 60% of the community that does not like having the 1 lane in each way and would like the 2 lanes in each direction for a multitude of reasons. And every one that I hear is around safety. It's constant tailgating during the busy times of the day, which is usually midday. I tend to be on Via Appia after 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night, and I'm leaving these meetings, and I can go down any street in Louisville, and it's not an issue. I can turn left on Via Appia almost immediately. You just have to drive at 10 p.m. But the real concern, though, so I hear that a lot. I hear about the people that are tailgating. I had a person who actually was telling me they pulled over into the bike lane to let the tailgater go by them. So actually, I heard this from the person who was 2 behind. I think I told the story before. They watched the person pull over in the bike lane. The guy in front of them, the tailgater, went past. They then continued past, and then they watched the person get back behind them again to get back in the lane of traffic, right? They didn't turn off onto a street and they just pulled into the bike lane and waited because they didn't want to be tailgated the entire length of Via Appia because they were doing the speed limit. I'm hearing a lot of concerns, and we just had a pretty bad car accident turning into the rec center a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it was a pretty serious car accident, actually, where somebody got T-boned. And that, I think, is a cause of there is nowhere for people to go. When somebody's slowing down to turn into the rec center, everybody just has to slow down, which is fine. but most people then want to go around them, so that especially if there's multiple people, like it's a busy time of the day, early morning with lots of classes, or toward the end, late afternoons again. It's typical, like, it's all those busy times. We're not talking about the slow times when it might be easy to drive or turn. We're talking about the few times of the day that there is more traffic. So I hear that a lot. So I completely have to tell you, I'm so sorry, Kurt. I don't agree that the no right turn on red at South Boulder and via Appia should be no longer discussed. It is discussed with me very frequently. So I think the community would like to discuss it, at least something around the timing of that light, how we work on the no right turn on red, like absolutely make sure that big no right turn on red is activated anytime a pedestrian has activated the crosswalk and is crossing. That should be an absolute mandatory thing to help with pedestrian safety. But I also am hearing that the timing's wrong. There's no cars, there's no people, and there's 5, 6, 7 vehicles trying to turn right on South Boulder Road. And they just sit there idling, waiting to turn, and for no reason. And it could be the time of day. It's not a busy time of day for a lot of other people, but it's very busy on Via Appia. Like early mornings, I'm hearing like people who have been at the rec center leaving and then heading back east. So I hear that a lot. But mostly I do hear that from an evacuation, from a safety perspective, for the people on the west side of town, they would absolutely like to have the 2 lanes in each direction absolutely be back. If we have to lower the speed limit to 30 from 35 to get people to do 35, I think more people would be interested in that. But people would like to be able to have the lanes. And like I said, it is not everyone, not by a stretch. Some, like one of our meetings, it felt more like a 50-50. But again, like Councilmember Cooperman, I was like knocking on a lot of doors and talking to a lot of people. And this is probably the number one topic of conversation that comes up. I think the thing that I am hearing consistently is the initial reason for the entire conversation about doing anything on Via Appia was a pedestrian safety issue. It was concerns with people not being able to cross the street safely. And I don't think that we've effectively done that. I think the community does not. And they're telling me that we have not effectively done that. I've heard some of the similar things that Councilmember Hamilton did with people who are living in North Pine trying to cross the street in the mornings and in the afternoons for getting to schools. Huge issue. There's just people don't stop. So they play Frogger, and there's nowhere to stop in the middle of the road. So Frogger is really difficult when you don't have that middle median spot. Maybe I'm aging myself. Has everybody played Frogger? But if every one of our crosswalks had a safe place for people to stop in the middle, and if we had somebody, let's say, who had a baby carriage and a dog and a toddler, and they can't quite make it there fast enough, they get to the middle and you compress it again. And then the beacons or a pedestrian activated traffic light, which I think a lot of people can see the traffic lights from more than one car back because the beacons tend to be a little bit lower to the ground. People instinctively, after 40 years of driving, and even a young person, they really know what to do at a traffic light. Red, yellow, green. It's a moving violation. It's points on my license. Hit the brakes when it's red. Regardless of whether that's activated by a person or, it's an intersection, people know what to do at a traffic light. So they know to stop. I've seen them be incredibly effective at 88th Street, just on the south side of the bridge going into Superior. There's a pedestrian activated traffic light that is like perfect. I mean, I've watched the cars. I've been in the traffic when somebody's walking across and it's a red light. I don't even have to worry. Is it a beacon? Is there a person? Was there a dog that got loose? And it's a red light. So I stop. Everybody stops. Makes everyone safer. So those are some of the things that I'm hearing. I would say that my number one concern is pedestrian safety. I like enhanced rideability. Again, love hearing all the positive feedback about the wider bike lane. But we still need help with improving pedestrian crossing safety. And I think specifically Sagebrush to South Boulder Road is where we have a lot of our problems, and we haven't changed the speed of the cars. Statistically, that's what we're seeing, whether it's the 1 or the 2 lanes, people are driving the same. People are still saying it's really hard to cross to get on RTD buses or the school bus, especially with Lafayette being the main crossing to get to LMS from all the people on the west side. And so in addition to the evacuation issues, and I really do appreciate the idea that it's education. People will drive if we, put the right wording on the road. Hopefully, maybe if they have to shift because the lanes are different and now you go here even though you never would. In an emergency, people will follow the traffic. They will follow the rules. There is a reason why people don't drive on sidewalks even when they need to. They don't cut through places that their car could. They won't do it. They don't do it. They didn't even do it during the Marshall Fire, right? And so I think we have to make sure that these roads are set up for that, especially as we are looking to add 1,000+ new housing units into Centennial Valley. That's what our new comprehensive plan is talking about. And I think that we need to be prepared. At a minimum, we know CU Boulder is definitely going to be coming in. That's going to be adding a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people coming to the rec center. But especially in that Centennial Valley area, Via Appia is a corridor. It's not a residential street. It's not like Polk and Dahlia. It doesn't have houses and driveways. It is absolutely meant to allow people to not have to go up McCaslin, down South Boulder. It's to ease some of that, and it's to get people into downtown, like coming on Pine. It's for the rec center. I think we've created a vehicular traffic problem that we didn't have before in a good-minded effort. I mean, a genuine concern and a positive effort to improve pedestrian safety. But we created one problem and didn't adequately solve the other or improve it enough, I think. I'm appreciative of some of the additional and new beacons throughout the corridor. I think I get a lot of good positive feedback on that. But people would like something more that would be more mandatory for a car to stop. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah. So I appreciate the work. Honestly, I do. I think there's a lot of really good ideas. I'd also really genuinely ask that some of the community good ideas and some of ours that are coming through on ways that we can make it safer for people to cross, especially when they're trying to get to a school bus or to an RTD bus, can make that happen safely. I think places too. I think I agree with Councilmember Dickinson's point with the trails. That's really valid. I think we need to make sure that that pedestrians can cross. One of the suggestions that I've had people make to me with the crossing near the rec center for that trail is to actually have some way to indicate before you get all the way down to the street. So like a cyclist or somebody could, whether that's this is your team's expertise area, whether that's tripping a sensor so that the beacons go, are indicated, rather than having to stop, hit the button, wait. Traffic will already be alerted then when they're coming down the hill. So, and I really appreciate all of the new, this is not specific for Via Appia and Polk and Dahlia, but all the new sidewalks you've done everywhere to help with ADA compliance and things. They've been excellent. I'm very thankful for that, and maintaining sidewalks for safety reasons. Polk and Dahlia, I hear the same things that everybody else does. Honestly, I loved Councilmember Dickinson's comments. I think it was last year. If we just added a striped line down the middle, it would really help ease a lot of people's confusion on how to use the road. I agree. I think most of the comments I hear are positive. Just a lot more negative on Via Appia from the vehicular piece as well as the issues with pedestrians. Thank you.
Director Cor, do you feel like you've got? I think there.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. Thanks for the time tonight.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Need to have on other parts of the presentation, if there are questions. I kind of want to wrangle back a little bit so we can get some public comment and then have more discussion, but there's a lot of slides there and I don't know whether council members have questions and concerns about those, so.
Yeah, we can put some slides quickly. I think I like the theme of everyone just downloading their thoughts. So if we're gonna get public comment, I'd like to just get it now, and then we just back into what everybody's thinking.
That's fine. I just want to give people a chance to provide some comment. Do we have members of the public who are interested in commenting? Okay, please.
First up is Rebecca Whalen.
All right. My name is Rebecca Whalen. I live in the Cornerstone neighborhood, so Judy's ward. I first of all thank you for all the effort that went into. I'm going to speak to Via Appia mostly. That's the one I live and breathe on every day. And I want to thank you so much for the research, I know so much went into it, and I know you've gotten so much flack around that. So I'm here to say thank you, because I strongly, strongly support keeping the current configuration. I would say that Via Appia is a neighborhood corridor. It connects homes, parks, bus stops, schools. It should function not like a 4-lane arterial built for speed. The city's data, and I've read through the data initially, shows that the current configuration is working. Traffic delays are measured in seconds, not minutes. At the same time, safety has improved for pedestrians and bicyclists. The street feels calmer. It feels more predictable. Speed is a core issue. We've all talked about this. I'm someone who, if someone's tailgating me, I'm the reason why people slow down. And I'd rather have there be a fender bender than in the situation where my son was crossing. Some person did not see that the person in front of them was stopped. The person ran right into the person who stopped for my son. My son crossed the street safely. Of course, there was a traffic accident, but this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about changing fender benders into a much more significant issue. Even a small increase in speed can dramatically affect outcomes. This matters, as I said, when children are crossing the street, when families are crossing the street. I also want to address evacuation. I am a Marshall Fire survivor. When we evacuated, we encountered no traffic on Via Appia. I made a left, no issue. We were late evacuators. It came South Boulder, bumper to bumper. The physical width of the road, in terms of, I'm confident in a true emergency, people will intuitively use 2 lanes of traffic. I'm very confident about that. We should not change everyday design around rare instances and at the expense of the daily risks our children and families face on Via Appia. Please maintain 1 through lane in each direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Wait, sorry. You gotta be quicker than that.
Good evening. I'm Andy Johnson, Louisville resident. I thought I was going to come speak about something a little bit different, but then I read all the slides that I missed because I'm getting used to the new format and how things are done. You need to go through those slides because they're amazing and the work that's gone into them is tremendous. So I hope you do it. We're solving dumb problems. We're solving problems of bad habits. We are solving problems of road design that we've had for decades. Roads, people will drive as fast as a road will let them. And that is just human nature. We're solving problems that we created, and we need to calm it. And so everything that we're doing is course correcting. We're not creating really like new roads. We're slowing ourselves down. Lane widths is a huge problem. Stripes are a huge problem. One of the best things that we've ever done is Dahlia and Polk. So, like you, I drive. Like you, I walk everywhere in Louisville. Unlike you, I have probably ridden more miles in Louisville and Boulder County than anybody here combined. And trust me, I have decades of that, of training and riding experience. I have explored the boundaries of how to get hit by a car on a bike. Luckily, I haven't. I have also lost a lot of friends, and that's sad. And the times that they do get lost are the ones where they're actually on a shoulder and quite separated from road traffic. So separated bike lanes are not a silver bullet. What is making sure that every car, every bike, every person is negotiating how they move on a road. So Dahlia and Polk is brilliant, truly. Every time you get in a car and you have to think about where you're going to go slower, you're going to be more careful. And if the bikes are in your lane, you're going to care. And I don't care who they are, if they're e-bikes with kids misbehaving, if they're me going too fast on my bike, or just someone commuting. It matters that that everybody is there and you're negotiating traffic. Do not put a white line down the middle. Otherwise, do it down Lincoln Avenue. It's a big lane, lots of traffic, goes fast. Let's see, lots of other things to say, but I do fully support all of the efforts that have been made. I've shared that with Kurt over the years. The things that we have done have made the biggest improvements in terms of safety. So, including what the first speaker said about Be Happy. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other public comment? No. All right.
Someone online. Oliver next.
Hi. Hey, this is my first time giving a comment. And I'll make it brief. A question to the council members that I've been curious about for a long time is what travel modalities council members take day to day. I get the impression that it is one modality for the most part. And I just wanted to voice that I would encourage all of the members to participate in all the modes of transportation that our residents along the corridors take day to day, not just drive, bike the corridors, walk them, wait for the bus, cross the intersections, stand at the stops, and notice what feels safe and what doesn't when making decisions like the ones being discussed. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll pull it back to discussion direction. I am curious if there's more part of the presentation you'd like to run through. Yep. That's fine. I recognize I'm not encouraging you to go through 62 slides. I think it's probably worth getting some input from council about whether they'd like, whether they'd like some additional time to chat about what we've already talked about, or additional information from you in terms of the slides and other presentation you've got. So, yes.
I'd like more information. Kurt.
Okay. Others? Yes.
I thought Councilmember Dickinson made a good point about our discussion staying at the policy level. I thought that was well said, and I'm happy to see more slides, especially sort of data slides about what's changed and to what extent, and then sort of use that to steer. I would like to steer in the direction Caleb suggested.
I'd like it if Director Coher was able to go through, I mean, I've read all the slides obviously, but go through more of that from for us as well as a public perspective, just to make sure that everyone saw and heard some of the same data that's come from the changes, rather than having a detailed discussion about all the different roundabouts.
Okay. I'm looking at the clock here. Let me get this piece and then we may need a break in the middle. I'm trying to sort of figure out where we want to go and how long it might take. When you were, let me clarify, you would like to continue this discussion or to do more on the slides that
Yeah,
Kurt's
do more on the slides, like go through the data, the piece of this is here, this to see what the effects of different things are.
Okay. Any others? I want to echo what Councilmember Dickinson and Councilmember Hefner said. We did get the flight chart at the beginning, which Deputy City Manager Fox is appropriately fond of using and reminding us, because we need to stay at the policy level. I think that I am concerned in these, part of the challenge of these discussions is we hear things in the community. And I think you hear things in the community, and a lot of people talk to you too, and not necessarily. I think each of us hears different things. I don't think anybody on the council hears what everybody is thinking in the city. I just think we do our best to try to get out, and we hear plenty. People email us, people, send us letters and so forth. But I really appreciate the central importance of safety as a general policy and the TMP as something that we want to keep implementing. So I think Councilmember Hefner made a really good point about focusing on your slides on policy level decisions that we have to make. And hopefully we can come around to, at sort of maybe the end of that conversation, if there's more specific direction that we want to make to you. That's good. I don't hear an awful lot about doing a huge amount of public engagement. We did a huge amount before. That does not mean we are not interested in hearing from the public. That's a different issue. But I really do appreciate the work that's been done. I think everybody does, to a person. Can we, any further comment on that suggestion that we spend more time on policy piece, and then we'll come back to make sure we come back to what we started with, which was via Appia and Polk Dahlia as a specific item. Yes, Councilman Cooper.
Maybe we could just be clear about what Kurt would like to get out of our discussion too.
Yeah, at a high level, you have $550,000 budgeted this year that you could do something with if you wanted to. We're also about to enter our capital improvement budgeting cycle for the next 2-year budget. It's likely that Via Appia falls into the paving schedule within that 2-year budget. So input you give us guiding principles and high level policy things. We would design a capital sheet specific to Via Appia that would talk about the types of improvements that we'll put in and that total cost and timeline. So I think you got a short-term consideration and then a longer 2-year consideration. Key thing though is I think high level think 2 lanes is working. And we understand 4 lanes is what some people prefer. But our professional opinion and just all the conversations we think we hear, we think the 2-lane is working based off data, input, and safety. And so I think the first thing is we just need to decide, are we sticking with 2 lanes. Because if that's still a topic of conversation, none of these other details matter. So policy topic 1, 2 to 4 lanes. And then I think on Polk Dahlia, we'll have options we'll talk about in a minute. So I'll stop there. That's the high level.
What I'm hearing from you, Director Corward, is that it would be useful to you to hear our 2 to 4 lane discussion and the Polk Dahlia discussion first before we get to the slides. Because I may not be hearing that right, but that's
I was answering just what do I need from you, but
in the end.
let me run through slides for about,
Okay.
I think 5 minutes, and then we'll pause.
What I want to do though, I want to take a break, but I want to take a temperature of council in terms of timing because it's 8:15 and we have more to do, more to cover. Want to take at least a 5-minute break when we're done with this little, Councilmember Kern.
When we get back, I just would like to ask Director Coer to clarify his comment.
Probably do that right now. Is there?
I would like him to tell us, like you were saying, to staff's perspective and from an engineering piece, the 2 lanes is working. I'd like to know what that means. What is working? What was the original goal? And so help us understand what the working properly is.
I think that'll be easier done from a slide that I'll show you.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, let's take 5. Let's come back at 8:22. Thanks.
822. 822.
We're back on. Would you like to regale us with a couple of key slides on policy issues? Please.
So just jumping in, I think you guys answered a lot of the questions we had in the first slide. And then just this strategy as we think through improvements that we talk about, just is it going to improve it for just pedestrians and bikes crossing the road or going along the road? Does it improve it for cars? Does it improve it for all users? Then after that, you're going to spend money to do a thing, whatever the thing is. Does it work now? And then is it going to work? So where the comp plan is going to add some housing per se. Dr. Cog modeling says there's more traffic that comes from growth around us. So then there's in 10 years or 20 years, there's going to be some amount of more traffic that gets modeled. That's by the smart people back here. And so will it work in 2035? Will it work in 2045? Whatever you spend your money on now. 2035 is not long out if you're spending millions of dollars, right? So, and then can we even fund it? Like we'd have the best idea, and then city manager's office will wah. We got other priorities, so she's just going to put us right back in check. So, does it truly need to provide the highest level of service or comfort? Like, so every user is going to come and say, like, I need a button up the hill. So by the time I get to the road, I don't have to think. Like, I don't know. Like that's like saying I need a sensor 300 feet back on the traffic signal so I never tap the brakes. Like, but then like you're creating this thing where people aren't going to think again. Like you're just going right. So like everything's just revolving around everyone's individual needs and convenience. And like, that's not safety. I'm sorry to say it, but convenience and not thinking is not safe. Uh, Making people stop, making people look around, making people confused is what creates safety. Another thing to ask yourselves, it's okay to do nothing. So we're going to talk about some things where the level of service or the level of comfort may be adequate. It's not, but someone's going to come and say it's not good enough for me. But that doesn't mean we should do something, okay? We always jump to make sure everyone's happy. We're approaching a diminishing return. Okay, this project goes way back in time. This isn't a new topic for anybody, so just covering bases here. TMP, we talked about that. So it talked about signage, enhancing the crosswalk, removing right turn lanes for bike safety, creating the pedestrian refuges, the concrete things in the middle, and then more space for the bike lanes. So we've achieved a lot of that. That's cool. We put together a transportation plan, not a master plan, and we have achieved a lot of what we wanted in this project. And then we've gotten some pushback. We got here on Via Appia because we needed to do some striping because we were going to do a big project to reduce it down to 2 lanes with concrete curbs. Then we had a fire and we said, maybe that's not the best place to put money. Now it no longer hooks up with evacuation concerns. So we needed to restripe it. We said we could do these other things. We got a lot of public input. And so we did some other things. And so that's how we're at where we're at. So what we've heard, people don't stop at the crosswalks without the RFP. You're right. The compliance rate shows that it's only 20 or 40%. 60% of the time you go to cross at a crosswalk on Via Appia, the cars are going to buzz by. That's just the stats. So when people say like the cars aren't stopping, absolutely, they're not. That's what you get for that. We should put in raised crosswalks on Via Appia. It's a PD route. It's a fire route. Also, it's a bus route. You just can't have a bus rocking and rolling down Via Appia. It doesn't work, guys. Okay, so we gotta back off of that. We should put in RFPs at XYZ locations. Like, yeah, it's not bad to put them in, but then there's a point where you get so many, there's just kind of too much. So we want to be strategic. We also don't want to create everyone crossing everywhere because then that also starts to jam up traffic if you just got beacons going off everywhere because that takes away, I think you said efficiency, Mayor. So we should put in a hawk or a traffic signal at XYZ. I mean, we can be strategic about these things. We don't think the Hawks or a traffic signal is the way to go. If we're worried about level of service on side streets, when the level of service is failing, we're talking you're waiting an extra 15 seconds. Maybe on average, you're waiting 15 to 45 seconds. But then if you get to 45 to 60 seconds, it's failing and then the world's ending. The minute I put it in a traffic light, you're going to wait 60 to 90 seconds. But somehow the traffic light's better. The math doesn't add up for me. Yes, a traffic light signal is 60 to 90 seconds. Yeah. There you go. Right, but I'm talking also just the delay when people are worried about delay. But we'll get to gaps in traffic. We should put out bump outs in XYZ. Like we could, but again, that gets in the evac capacity. And then I don't think there's an overall problem. I never see anyone biking here or there. We do. We see everything. We go out there. We ride it once a year. I take like 20 people out from the city, planners and engineers, and Caleb went with us one year. And we rent e-bikes and we ride everything. We ride everything we've done. We ride Polk Drive, we ride Via Appia, we ride South Boulder Road in the bike lane. We do all the things. I subject everyone to the risk or the comfort so that we can feel it. Vehicle behavior. Now here we'll focus on that. People pass me in the hashed out right turn lanes. Yeah, that's happening. It's a problem. So we either need to put right turn lanes back, which the data doesn't really suggest that capacities are there to do that, but you could put them back. It just puts conflict back between the right turn and the bike lane. But we have low amounts of biking, so you could put them back, or we could put pylons up, and then people can't make that shift over. It's not going to fix everything. People had passed me in the hatched out unused lane. I'm sure that happens. Is it happening all the time or often? We don't think so. Is it a risk or a problem that should keep you from making a decision? No, I would park that. I wait longer now and turn left at XYZ. Yeah, I think an AM PM peak hour, rush hour. Maybe every once in a while someone's waiting a little bit longer, and the data does suggest that. But it suggests that they're not waiting much longer, and generally over the course of the day, we're giving better service. People tailgate me. It's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt or worse. Tailgate, fender bender is generally property damage, not an injury accident. It's a low impact type of situation. There's no trends that we're having those at right turns, but there is a trend that they're happening at the beacon. So everybody loves a beacon, but the minute you put in a beacon, then you're going to have more fender benders with cars. It's just, you want traffic calming to kind of whisper slow down, not shout it all at once, right? So it's that sudden stop that gets people. And there's only one lane to evacuate. We hear that there's work to do on outreach and education. Via Appy is a very wide road, not just one side, but both sides. I think we can work with Boulder OEM and our just emergency responders and do the rehearsal that we talked about. We have contacts we've reached out to in Paradise, and they do annually, they do an evacuation practice. So we're talking about that. And so I think a lot of opportunity there. We're going to keep moving. So yeah, we hear the complaints on the crossing at the RFBs. People feel better because it's one lane of traffic stopping. You're not worrying about the first lane and the second lane to stop at the beacons. The complaints on Pine and Tyler are up from people that just have crosswalks, no beacons. So we're matching up. Complaints about tailgating, we're matching up there. The side street wait times are a bit up. We see that a little bit. But it's working well from the data perspective of the intended two-lane configuration. So the comfort of people crossing the street, most of the comments we hear today, I hear some that aren't, but most of the comments of feedback we're getting is people feel more comfortable crossing the street. Speeds have come down on the ends of the road. There's still some areas in the middle. So we said speeds would come down 3 to 5 miles per hour in some areas, and we'd reduce people's risk and exposure, and we've accomplished that. So that was just the original desire. Now, we didn't say we're going to solve every problem on the corridor, and we can talk about what's still out there. So the speeds are down on either end. There's high frequency of the rear end collisions at the beacons, side street, we've talked about. So 4 lanes versus 2 lanes. If you go back to 4 lanes, as traffic grows, everything's going to get harder sooner because you're navigating more lanes. And so 4 lanes actually will shorten the life cycle of the road for level of service. 2 lanes will squeeze more juice out of the road per se. But that doesn't mean people perceive it that way. So Just remind everyone on the traffic law that we do this every presentation now because it got out of control. Cars have to stop when people show interest going into the street. Does it mean they always will? No. People need to stop and show that, make sure the cars are going to stop. So the pedestrians and bikes have an equal obligation. We've talked about 88 to 80 years old for all your ages and abilities. We do use the 85th percentile speed for what's the normal speed people are traveling out there. We are aware from the Confessions of a Traffic Engineer, YouTube, and the book that talks about stroads, and you've had people send you emails and all. We're aware 85th percentile is not the only way to think about it. So we're not being purist. And then average daily traffic is just the amount of traffic on the road. Let's just talk about stats in Louisville. CDOT crash data, state database, publicly available. If you look at all injuries, bicyclists and pedestrians are definitely in there. It happens consistently through the year. It's happening, if you look down lower left, week at a glance, it's happening in the morning rush and the PM rush. Okay? That's where people are getting hurt. Let's look at where we have fatalities versus cars or people. More people have died in this community in the last 10 years on bikes or walking. I think they've all been walking. And the cars where we've had deaths are like kind of some anomalies. It's not like a crash factor thing. It's a health emergency. It was drugs and alcohol or a potential suicide. So like our roads are killing our pedestrians. Our stats show that. That trend has also not slowed down, okay? 2025, thank God. But we've been pretty consistent every 2 to 3 years. Serious injury. It's bikes and peds are the ones taking most of the serious injury. So again, we're talking, if you feel unsafe in a car, a wreck's going to happen. But it's a property damage thing. It's a fender bender. It's the people in the cars are getting hurt. It's the people where the car's hitting the bike or the person. And so those trends are consistently there. These are incidents we've had. You guys have seen the packet. I won't dwell here, but this is a real threat, and it still is in our community. When we look at our corridor accidents, this is pre-improvement, this slide on Via Appia. Green are areas where bikes and cars interacted with each other, and there's generally a car turning into a bike. One of them was on a sidewalk. One of them, the bike was on the bike lane, but they were coming the wrong way in the bike lane. So that's kind of, those are a little bit of anomalies. The yellows are where beacons have been pushed, and then cars stopped, and then the car behind them didn't stop. And if you go really into the crash reports, someone said, I was looking at a burned house. I was on my phone. My brakes didn't work. Like just a lot of distracted stuff. Like the pattern before we did anything was people were distracted. Afterwards, same patterns. People were distracted at the beacons. So beacons are our trend. That is really the only trend. Everything else is, yes, there's a person that mistimed their left turn and they got hit by an oncoming car. There's people that run stop signs and then they hit cars. People fall asleep. People slide from snow. A lot of random stuff, but it's not geometry. It's not tailgating or the right turns or the left turns. So there's just not strong patterns other than the beacons. So we just, again, reiterate this. We're trying to create a safe system approach. Everything's optimized for cars. And we're just trying to, someone said course correct tonight, but humans are going to make mistakes, right? And when they do, we want to have redundancies so we capture them and we don't have bad things happen to them, serious injuries or fatalities. So we're being proactive today by sitting here talking about it and trying to think how to continuously tweak it. When we talk about how people feel, so we're going to talk about level of service, also just level of comfort. If you just say like, well, what does the traffic engineering manual say? It's going to look for a number of cars or a number of people, and there's thresholds, and it's generally a lot of the traffic engineering purity comes from, high downtown, high intense suburban uses. A lot of our areas where we did traffic calming, this is comfort. There's no thresholds that said it should be done there. So we're really working for comfort. So we're balancing comfort and safety for everybody. When it comes to cars, we're looking for, when traffic engineering reports look at things, we're looking for D to E. This isn't like elementary school where we all want the A or the B or the C. Like it's nice. A, B, and C is where we just kind of float, our brains off. You can float uninhibited, so you're getting on the phone. A, B, and C is where bad things happen, okay? D&E is where there's traffic, you're waiting a little longer, it's your rush hour. F is where you're really failing. So like, I don't know, I'd say some of the Boulder County roads where traffic stacks up and you got to wait 2 to 3 cycles to get through a light, that's a failing traffic light. On the side street level of service, and I'll show you here in a second, but I'll come back to level of service. So on the bikes and the peds, we're trying to provide high comfort on all areas. So that's high comfort for all those ages and then all adults. So yes, if we did not do these things, is the jogger that jogs every day going to get across the street that's, mid-age, healthy, and just kind of bounds like no other frogger? Absolutely. But is the little kid going to get across safely, or the elderly person that's moving slower? Probably not. So, and again, we go out there. A lot of these meetings, I go play in the road before the meeting. I didn't today, but I go play in the road to remind myself, why are we doing this? Did we miss something? So I've crossed Pine Street, I don't know how many times. I don't think it's great at all. I wouldn't want my kid out there. Just people worried about our data. So when we take traffic counts, every hour we get the counts of northbound, southbound, how fast the car is going, how many axles, what type of car. So we got all this data. It just tells us there's a lot of traffic in the AM, PM, but we can get it down to like a 15-minute period. And so when we talk about there's a level of service, A, B, C, or F on an intersection, it's literally just saying in that 15 to 30-minute window, this is your worst level of service through the day. It doesn't mean it's an F or an E or a D all day long. It's just for 15 minutes. So generally on Lafayette area, the speed's reduced just a little bit, like 2 miles an hour on the speed studies. I would say that's not really a change. And the speed limit there is 30-ish, 30. Pine Street, things came down 3 to 5 miles per hour. I would in the Pine and east of Pine, so towards McCaslin. So we achieved success in that area. And then Lafayette or Tyler, people are kind of cruising. There's just not a lot of friction, right? There's not a lot of beat. There's no mid-block crosswalks. There's no curves. There's no police department or rec center keeping people honest as they're driving by. So you just kind of got this like little mini Autobahn in the middle, which we can acknowledge. We just talked about traffic calming, but this is like we changed the geometry, and someone said geometry defines how people drive. And your heads were nodding when we were talking in the middle of the tire, like, oh yeah, man, I start daydreaming. And I look down, I'm going 45. And I'm like, shoot, I'm a council member. I got to hit the brakes. We all do it. You get caught doing it. It's because the geometry is letting you relax and just coast. And the cars want to coast 40 to 50 miles an hour. The reason traffic calming works is because it makes you think. We're trying to take autopilot away. That also makes people angry because they're thinking about getting their kid to school, or they just something happened to their dog. Things are going on in their life. They don't want to think when they're driving. But when they're distracted with all these thoughts and they're not thinking about the road, that's when, again, bad things happen. We talked about reducing the severity and to eliminate just how much it's happening or how severe. And then again, that navigating, that negotiating, this is really the poke and dahlia thing. We're forcing everyone to think and negotiate contracts everywhere on that road. And I can show you in the data, you can see in the speeds when they're not negotiating and when they are. Just, I want to hammer it down because everyone just wants to solve the problem. Cars don't stop. Well, then we got to tweak what we have at the intersections. Again, paint only, low compliance, RFB, you get high compliance, but still, 10 to 25% are going to possibly shoot through. Now that we got to a single lane, that fixes a lot of that. But when you have 4 lanes in either direction, you have more chance for people to shoot through in that second lane. And then the Hawker traffic signal, which we talked about, everyone understands high compliance, but increases delay. You can decide if this should be an arterial or not, but the arterials divide neighborhoods and they don't stitch neighborhoods together. And so we are in an era where people are trying to stitch things together, connectivity, multimodal, people crossing the street, kids, all the uses. This road was built for a larger regional concept. And by bringing it down to 2 lanes, it's 20,000 cars a day is the capacity of 2 lanes, and we're running 8 to 12. And that may continue to grow. I think Councilwoman Fahey, you talked about what's the road carry and what has it carried in the past. It just historically has carried like between 8 and 12,000 cars. There's less towards South Boulder Road, and there's more towards McCaslin. So you got a lot coming off McCaslin. Once you get to Pine, that split kind of happens, and then the 8,000. So I think the road's been pretty consistent, and I don't know if it's going to see significant growth, but I don't want to bank the future on all of that. Level of service. So we put a drone up in the air 2 years ago, and we measured it when it was 4 lanes. We measured it when it was 2 lanes under construction. And then we put a drone back in the air almost 2 years later to the point and measured. And so this was like AM. And so if you just kind of look on the left column where it says 12/1/23, A, B, and C, the cumulative level of service was 64%, and D was 83%. So that's kind of the cumulative, all the cars are getting that level of service or better. And if you go all the way to the right, where we're at today, A, B, and C, we went from 64 cumulative to 88, and we went from 83 to 92. We are probably having some failing in the F range here and there, but a failing means that like you get a car show up, maybe there's cues coming from either way, and they wait a little bit, or maybe it's just a cautious driver that could have gone, but they're waiting. So the worst fail we've seen is like just 4 cars stack up. And then once the first car clears, the other 3 go pretty quick. So it's not horrible. Just talking about how we, make all this level of comfort feel better. You have the pedestrian refuge in the middle. You add a beacon. You're only crossing 1 lane versus 4 lanes or 2 lanes. So minimize your lanes, have the split in the middle with the concrete and maybe a beacon. That's how you increase the level of comfort. Same thing for bikes. Bikes are a little different, but same thing. On the bike lanes is making that bike lane wider or ultimately protected. Protected gets very expensive. So again, we're trying to make those everybody comfortable. Just on this last slide, so level of service for all your side streets. If you look in the gray area, A means you're waiting less than 10%, less than 10 seconds. You're tapping the brakes and you're going. B is 10 to 15. C is 15 to 25 seconds. 25 to 35 D, 35, 50. Like F is greater than 50. So we're talking seconds, not minutes, not hours. These are things that people can wait for. This will continue to get worse as the road builds out. So I'm going to start skipping ahead. We added left turns. There's the school crossings. So we just talk about what are we trying to solve? There's a lot on this road. So we've got speeds. It started with people want to control speeds. They want to control speeds because it felt uncomfortable and dangerous to cross. And that speed at 40 miles, 45 miles per hour, it's like 80% you're going to kill somebody, right? So you want to slow it down, make the crosswalk safer. That's where we started. So we did that. We reduced the lanes to try and slow people down to make the crossing safer. Did we solve all the problems out there? We did not, because we still have just painted crosswalks at, say, Pine and Tyler, where now that compliance rate is still low. And maybe you've condensed those gaps with the traffic to 2 lanes. So people have to wait on those crosswalks a little longer or those side streets longer. There's also the bus. People brought up the bus. So we've got bus riders at South Boulder Road. We've got bus riders at Pine. Those are our major 2 areas. We've got visibility concerns. People complain about Pine Street a lot. Rec Center a little more. I've heard rumblings that people complain about Lafayette. North of the corridor, you've got the school crossings that people have concerns about. I think someone said Lafayette. I've heard Lake Park. Then we've just got overall the concerns for evacuation. Then we gotta get fire and PD moving fast to whatever they're gonna go work on. And then finally, we've just got our active routes. So the circles on this graph show in green where we have a high activity. So you can see high activity is matching up with what I have is like little green crosswalks. Those are where your beacons are. People are trending to your beacons using the trail system as we just talked about. So we've probably solved the trail system problem. We have low activity kind of at for active activity at Pine and El Dorado and Lafayette, and then up by South Boulder Road. So we're not worried as much about the active users there. There is mid activity at Tyler. That's just because that road goes through and get to that neighborhood better. So we're just trying to balance all these things. I think the way when you layer all these things, you look at what's working, what's not. We do have things to solve at Pine Street, and then after that, maybe Tyler and Rec. You can balance what you want, what's more important, and probably depends who you talk to. And then probably after that, Lafayette. You can get into the church lanes and the Elderados where people want a right turn lane. Again, the traffic volume and the speed and the number of cars turning right doesn't really justify it. But if you want to have that for comfort, it's something we can look at. We talked about the toolboxes. So we looked at roundabouts at these areas. You can put in this modular roundabout for 800,000. That's a toolbox thing. Your permanent roundabout is going to be around 2.5 million, but that's going to like probably take away a little bit of evac route unless we have a big apron, which means you're not going to have much landscaping. So I don't determine your values there. If we don't do anything with roundabouts, we say traffic's fine for now. We want to just do some pedestrian improvements. Like at Pine and Tyler, we could extend the medians and create the pedestrian refuges. So now you have that protection. You could look at layering on a beacon. We wouldn't recommend it as much with the busy traffic. You could go to a combined bicycle and car right turn lanes to kind of clear some of this up. That's an opportunity. We did look at always stops. Like, hey, why are we spending all this money? Let's just put in stop signs. You could maybe get away with it at your low volume roads, like your Lafayette's, maybe Tyler. Pine Street and Rec Center have enough cross traffic that as you start to get that four-way stop pattern going, it's really going to back up. So you can see how far these things back up by the red line. In AM PM rush, you're just going to have a long line of cars backing up. So not recommended. Also, when people start to queue up that much, they're going to start rolling the stop signs. So then you introduce danger back into something on the crosswalks. So you look at all these things, you look at all the things you can do. And then so these are the options as they matrix across all the streets. And I'm going to stop there. I think what I heard as a theme was Pine and maybe Tyler crosswalks are a problem. And then how do we handle level of service expectations for cars and that we think there's Pine's the worst. We think there's adequate levels of service there, but we understand people would like that level of service to be better. So you can solve that with a roundabout. You could solve it with a traffic light. Roundabouts are safer. There's less conflict. The collisions are just a side swipe, not a T-bone. And also people aren't blowing traffic lights and teeing up pedestrians. So traffic lights may be more familiar, but roundabouts are safer by a mile. They add more comfort for everybody. They also don't depend on power. When you have power outages, it just still works. So I'm going to park there. I heard no public engagement, work to do on evacuations. And then I think you got to tell us the theme of the CIP sheet. You might want us to come back with the cost out things.
Councilmember Kern, we left off. Did you get your questions answered?
I think so. Yeah, I think Dr. Coer did hit the why they think the 2 lanes is working. I wanted to bring up Rock Creek Parkway in Superior, and I don't know if the council is familiar with that road. It's basically via Appia, and what they did is they kept the 2 lanes and made them more narrow, added the wider bike lane, and got rid of the turn lanes. So either the left lane or the right lane, like in the 2 lanes, becomes a turn lane essentially. If you're turning left, people behind you would have to slow down or get in the right. If you're turning right, they slow down. That's what they have done on Rock Creek to help make it safer for bicyclists, to make it much safer for pedestrians to cross. And I think they did enhance some of those at the crosswalk, some of the medians in the middle so that people can cross traffic going in one direction. So you don't have to navigate like traffic coming from different directions. It's all the cars coming from my left and I cross, and then I'm waiting and I'm all the cars from my right, and then I'm crossing. So for a pedestrian, maybe like at a trail crossing, it's not as effective because people are trying to run or ride their bikes versus just walking across. But I was going to say at Sagebrush, or I guess just past where the trail comes across, I noticed even in your statistics, we're still getting people doing like the rear end accidents because somebody does stop for the beacon, somebody doesn't. You know, obviously it's been the worst accident ever on Via Appia was there. I would really recommend that we all seriously think about something other than just a beacon and figure out why. Why is the beacon at that location less effective than the beacons at our other locations, right? Maybe it's the trees. Maybe it's the fact that there's a sign in the center that tells you about the median and it's in front of even the beacon sign, so, or the pedestrian crossing sign. Maybe those need to be reversed. That's something simple, but it's those are the little tiny things. But I saw that reoccurring pattern at that particular crossing. If we can look at that and think about that.
So you feel that the beacon at Sagebrush has less compliance by cars than at other beacons on the corridor? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, based on your data, you were showing crashes and things before the change to the road and even after the change to the road. And 3 of them of the after happened at that intersection. Plus the worst.
You mean the rear ends?
Rear ends as well as the, like I said, the only like horrific pedestrian incident was actually there. So and after we made the changes and very low speeds. So to the point, I just have a huge concern with everything from there to South Boulder. We seem to have a lot of crossing, but that particular one, I don't know why cars just aren't being as compliant. And I'm not, or maybe it's the pedestrians cross faster because it's trail. I'm not sure if there's research maybe that just more that can get done to help us with that particular spot. But it is something food for thought, though, is instead of putting all of these right and left turn lanes in, do we just keep the wide bike lane, 2 narrow lanes in each direction? So again, to your point, Kurt, it makes it less comfortable. It doesn't feel good to do more than like 35 miles an hour on Rock Creek Parkway when there's another car going by you. It creates traffic like speed controls, and I'm not sure what their data shows because I think they made the changes a little over a year ago. So they might have some interesting data on the efficacy of that. Since it's a different thing than what we did, maybe it's worth pulling their data and seeing.
Other comments? Yes. Councilmember.
Is this time for like to start into discussion about direction at least?
Yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, I hear, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, we still have the question of sort of generally what people might like to see on Via Appia, not maybe just striping, although we need to do the striping issue, but also some of the traffic calming that he's talked about, as well as Poke Dahlia.
I want to stay focused on Via Appia.
Okay, and that's fine.
And I think we'll move to Polk Dahlia. It'll be a simpler conversation.
Absolutely fine doing that. I'm trying to survey the whole group or put the whole universe of what we have before us on us. And I don't know that there are other. I mean, those are still the biggest issues that we're dealing with. So,
If I
thoughts, please.
Yeah. So, but you know, based on what you've showed us, and I think the discussion so far, my conclusions are this: the existing restriping is a big net improvement, and we should keep it. There's potentially a problem at Pine and with speeds on the middle of the corridor that need to be addressed. I don't know that I have a particular favorite about how to address them. I think to a certain extent, less is more. $2.5 million seems like a lot of money to some of us, at least. And I guess I would sort of defer to your judgment as to whether that's a really good use of that kind of money. And might we be better off with some version of turn lane configurations and pedestrian islands and sort of smaller incremental improvements? And then I guess I would just say even bigger picture. I mean, I'm so pleased and glad that we did the experiment to find out what results we would get, and the results are overwhelmingly positive, at least by these numbers. Not perfect, but overwhelmingly positive. And I hope that you will continue to experiment and iterate in a similar way so that we can continue to improve over time. And I think small iterative changes are often better than sort of big wholesale changes that can be expensive and problematic.
Uh, Once again, Councilmember Hefner nicely summarizes my thoughts on this as well. The only thing that I'll add is regarding, some traffic calming measures in the middle of the corridor. I would say the one that I'm probably less enthusiastic about, or the concrete one, because that will literally, for evacuation concerns, really narrow down that opportunity for multi-lane evacuation. But otherwise, I agree with Councilmember Hefner.
Yes, Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I apologize, but I really find this whole conversation to be inappropriate. I we have I made a joke of it. We have hundreds of roads, hundreds of issues, thousands of intersections, bump outs. The thing we did on Pine near LES where you bring the bikes in, there are thousands of things to talk about. Tyler and Via Appia is one of thousands of intersections. I couldn't possibly want to tell you what to do at that intersection. Because if I did, I'd want to tell you about the intersection of Hickory and Washington. I don't want to talk about that intersection. I don't want to talk about the speed bumps on Washington or the speed bumps on Polk and Dahlia or the speed bumps on Madison. I want us to have a coherent strategy for how we do traffic calming in Louisville. Are we a roundabout community or are we not? Are we a bump in community or are we not? Are we a raised crosswalk community or are we not? And if we are, we may not be able to afford to do it everywhere, but when we can afford something or when there's a problem, the solution we go to is raised crosswalks. It's not raised crosswalks. We go to pinching it or we go to single lane or what is the strategy we take so you guys can go implement it at 4,000 intersections? But I can't talk about every single intersection on Via Appia. I don't know. I don't know. I think what you've done on Via Appia is good. I think you did the exact same thing on Cherry. I hated it when you did it. It was a couple years earlier. I'm like, why are they doing 2 lanes to 1 lane? And no one talks about it. I guess just not as many people drive there or whatever. Or Ward 3 just doesn't care. But it's not a big deal. And I think what you did on Cherry works. And I think there are other parts of it that are kind of weird. And the paint came up real quick. I don't want to talk about the paint coming up real quick. You know about it. So you guys are fixing it, right? So I'm not saying these things aren't important. I'm not saying that. I think what's happening, right, is that Via Appia was it was just a big to-do. We had hundreds of people here talking about it. But it doesn't make it a more important road to me than Pine. It doesn't make it more important than Main Street. We're not talking about Main Street. Josh wanted to talk more about the intersection. And there's so many things to talk about. And so I think the transportation plan is good. I think that trying to unfortunately decrease the level of comfort of drivers and piss drivers off is the direction council gave you in 2019 to care more about pedestrians and bicyclists than cars. We've been a very car focused. McCaslin is 6 lanes. It's crazy, 7 or 8 sometimes with turn. 8-lane highway. We don't need it, but we're not talking about McCaslin. I don't know why, because we don't have time to talk about every road. So I think you guys are doing a great job. I think that there are improvements to be made on Via Appia for sure. And I could list off my 5 complaints about Via Appia, but they're little. And I think there are issues all over town. I think generally you guys are doing a good job. I really like Pine. I really like other things. I think there are areas throughout the entire town where we could use better crosswalks, more hawk signals. There are better, underpasses, and we talk about Powerline Trail and how it crosses Dillon Road. We're not talking about that today. But why aren't we talking about the crossing of Powerline Road and Dillon, Powerline and Dillon Road? We're not. But it's way worse than people are crossing a street with absolutely no intersection because it's the most convenient thing to do on a bike, and we're not talking about it. So you have 400 intersections. Please improve all of them over time, and don't spend too much money on big things like roundabouts. I don't think that's a great use of our money.
So just to clarify, you don't think we're a roundabout city?
That would be a big policy change. Like do we have a single roundabout in Louisville? We do?
Yeah, there's one over in Heckler.
Okay. Right, got it. Yeah, I can picture.
On the other side. It's
Yeah, I can picture those now. Yep. Yeah, they're right back to back, two roundabouts there. But so those are the two we have, right? So I think generally we're not, but that would be a conversation that I'd like to have for an hour. Should we be a roundabout community? That's a universal conversation we should be having, not what should we do with Pine and Via Appia, that one intersection. But if we want to do, yeah, I've said it.
Anyone else want to take a shot at?
So I was just saying, why we're talking about it is because the funding issues came up with the restriping. That's why we're talking about Via Appia, right? We just shouldn't have been talking about Via Appia because actually I'm looking at the 2019 TMP and it says improve signage, enhance crosswalks. We did a couple of those, added a few beacons, remove right turn lanes for bike safety, but not remove the car lanes, just the right turn lanes, and then create median pedestrian refuges and additional pavement spaces for the bike lanes, which is kind of the bike lane. Had we just done that, we probably wouldn't be having any more conversations. But we did more than that, right? So now we have to have a conversation again. And so I think that's part of the reason why we have to keep talking about Via Appia is because we did actually more than what we had tried. And now we've created a need for some vehicular changes that we didn't need if we just did this. I would love for us to just go back and do this. That would be perfect. And then we don't need roundabouts. We don't have to worry about it. I mean, it would be simpler just to follow the 5-line item plan and go back to that. We could do that, right? I mean, that we could do. Just do those 5 things.
You guys can do what you want. We wouldn't recommend it. South Boulder Road is the lanes are 10 feet wide on South Boulder Road with a bike lane now. Maybe not as wide as Rock Creek Parkway, but listen, I'm just gonna be honest with y'all. We got to get clarity on whether you're going to go to 4 lanes or 2, because there's just 2 different conversations. I can't come back every 6 months or a year and talk about should be 2 lanes or 4. So we're going to move on from this part. I'm sorry. I just need clarity.
Yeah, 2.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter. We know where people's votes are on this versus the people, the community that I represent, but yeah.
But I do acknowledge those that would prefer 4. I have to speak to the community.
That's why I brought up to all of you the conversation on the 2 lanes with no turns versus the single lane. And we're going to put all these turn lanes in, which again, actually make it harder for cyclists and drivers watching for cyclists. So that's where it's like, if we're worried about the biking safety, do we want to say we put the 2 lanes in with no turns so that it makes it safer and easier for the cyclists? I mean, I got 2 cyclists sitting here who cycle all the time. And I'd love to know, like, would you guys rather have the turn lane? I mean, I think this is the kind of input that Kurt doesn't know where to go, right? And this is a conversation for us to have.
I don't actually want to hear from the 2 cyclists, and not because I don't love them. I love both of them. I love that both of them cycle. I love that both of them know a great deal about cycling and traffic. We have staff who spent enormous amounts of time doing this. We actually have a city manager who did that also. And I appreciate that you're getting feedback, but we cannot make safety a function of people's inconvenience. I mean, but that's partly what we're talking about. And I actually trust, I trust our public works department to do this. They need closure on these kinds of issues because we have a certain amount of time. We can't come back another year and do this. We can't. And if I have anything to do with it, we won't, because we got too many other things. We just approved a work plan, and I don't see room for that. And to Councilmember Dickinson's point, I don't see a reason for it. I do think we need to, because we have the issue in front of us, I do think we need to deal with these couple of issues. I think we need to deal with 4 to 2, 2 to 4 on Via Appia. We need to sort of probably provide anything we're going to say about Polk Dahlia, and maybe we need to provide some guidance about whether we're a roundabout town or willing to do some kind of experiment with a non-concrete roundabout, or we have some other preference. But I think we can go forever and chase our tail on this. We've got people who actually have studied this, not just before, but during and after these tests. And I just have a hard time with our what do I want to say, anecdotal comments about the changes. I just don't think that's the way we can operate from a policy level. I may be wrong.
May I just give you guys a starting point? I didn't mean to like open up Pandora's box, but like I think the starting point is blending everything I think I've heard, everything the engineers have provided. We need to start at Pine Street. Should probably do a modular roundabout that provides the highest level of comfort and service for everybody. And then do pedestrian refuges at a few spots along the corridor like Tyler. That's a starting point. Start from that. Because then we can like narrow down to that, not the entire corridor.
Councilman Crafter.
I'd like to actually just do it quickly as a motion and see where everybody is, which is I would move we give the following direction to Director Coer and our staff, which is keep the 2-lane configuration and pursue additional incremental improvements along the problem areas of the corridor, sort of as time and budget allow. I mean, I think that's the direction I would give.
Second. Comments?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment in that we add in those key areas. It's not just the center. It's not the speed. Because the speed doesn't really matter if somebody's doing 35 or 37, if somebody can or can't. I think the bigger issue where we cross the street, you're taking that off. Yeah. I'll just call you out for turning off my microphone in the middle of a comment.
I hit
the
the wrong button. Sorry, I don't usually get this level of power over the conversation. But go ahead.
Even my husband doesn't do that and live.
It was note that it was unintentional. Go ahead.
So I would just like that we can focus, at least do some more research, because I'm literally, I don't know what page number this is. I'm constantly zooming in and out so I can read it. That talks about the additional concerns around sagebrush, beacon crosswalk. Actually, there's 4, not 3, that in your post change has come up. It's like the most issued crosswalk that you brought up in your, it says post improvement 2024 to present. If we can focus on that. So maybe it does more than a beacon or something. I just want to make sure, because
what's your
called
amendment
out
before we talk about that? Because
that we also improve the crossing, like focus on the crossing at Sagebrush, that trail crossing.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is the biggest accident trend is rear end accidents at Sagebrush. Look at that. Make sure if we can do something else there, consider that.
Let's do something else, because what we have isn't working. And the evacuation route being actually a designated space, if we are not going to have 2 lanes, which make it intuitive for people to evacuate on, some kind of evacuation routing on the road. We talked about that 2 years ago, and we said we would do it when we were repainting. So if we could do that.
So you're talking about 2 different changes.
Mm-hmm. So
okay.
Evacuation route painting, so that it's clear where people can drive their car when they're in an evacuation, and focusing on what seems to be the most concerning crosswalk that we have right now after the changes, which is Sagebrush.
Okay.
So I think that's consistent with what I was trying to propose. I'm specifically trying to avoid getting deep into the details and particulars. And at least what I tried to say is let's continue to have incremental improvements and focus on the problem areas, wherever those might be. Certainly the things you just said are examples of problem areas. And if it's including but not limited to those particular areas, I'm just fine with that.
So it sounds like you approve the,
I think so.
and I'm not going to stand in the way. So, all right, that's any other? Um, let's vote on that for the direction on via Appian. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose.
Right. So
Polk Dahlia,
let's
knock it out quick.
wait. We're not having any more discussion on that. You guys could take that up in the hallway. Go ahead and let's talk about Polk Dahlia.
Yeah, so Polk Dahlia, just start with the overview on the data. So right here, red line, upper right, I'm kind of shaking my arrow by it. That's the trail crossing right there. There's the red bump out there. So everything north of that is just a regular street with a wide bike lane. Everything south of that is an advisory bike lane. So first correlation of like, does the advisory slow things down? North of that crosswalk, speeds when we started this out were 25, now they're 30. We kind of like, funneled people. So there's less friction, traffic's the same. So nothing's changed north. If anything, they're going faster. Then you get down by Hackberry. Traffic's pretty much the same. Speeds are the same. Complaints are way down because we added a crosswalk, just painted crosswalk, but we haven't had complaints on that. Then we start to hit the curve. You get to South Madison. We've got a cushion and then a raised crosswalk. So speeds are down by 6 miles an hour. Traffic counts are still roughly the same. People love the raised crosswalks. They put up with the cushions. Then you keep going through the quarter. You get the three-way stop. Then you get a speed cushion. Then you get into the school area. I would say this last half of the whole quarter, traffic is different significantly. So speeds are similar, but they're at speed limit. Traffic is significantly down around the school. You come around the curve and you get back by the speed cushion going past Century. Again, speeds are down 3 to 4 miles an hour at speed limits, and then traffic counts are down. So it does look like the combination that we have out there works. It looks like if you go north of Polk towards Pine, where the road striping is just a normal road, the speeds are staying high. And so we think the combo is working. Now, if the advisory lanes are unpopular enough that you guys want to pull them back, we can pull them back. We would probably restripe back with just striping the parking area. So there's still lines that condense things, and we wouldn't want a middle line in the middle. We still want people to do the negotiating. So that's kind of a blend. But if you go backwards, we don't have capabilities to do anything for bikes. We're not suggesting you go in there and take out a whole side of parking for a bike lane. There's no room to make wider side, like the advisory bike lanes was the only way to acknowledge bikes. So going back to someone's comment about Pine Street and those bikes get in the middle in a shared situation, if you do a sharo, then the bikes are going to ride the middle of the lane. And then the cars are going to complain and that conflict gets reintroduced. When we have the advisory bike lanes, we are making people think and negotiate. There hasn't been any accidents, and there is a place for the bikes. So that if bikes are getting out of line, we can do outreach and education, say, stay in this area, get out of the middle so the cars can go in the middle. I've literally had a group on that road, not in rush hour, it was in the middle of the day, 20 bikes, and 2 lifted trucks came at the same time. I didn't know there's 2 lifted trucks in Louisville, to be honest with you. But they came at the same time from opposite directions. With our 20 riders, everyone negotiated fine. It worked fine. So we're just, yeah, you got to think, but it is a safe area because we're making everyone think. So we would recommend to leave it, but we understand that, in this area, that trade-off to peel back a little bit, we can go along with that too. It just takes away the bike areas. So we can also add a raised crosswalk at Hackberry and Century when we pave back. So we can add some more raised crosswalks too.
Yes.
So thoughts?
Councilmember Dickinson.
There were a bunch of accidents on this road and some people got hit and pedestrians hit, and There's a lot of emphasis put on trying to make this road safer, and you did.
You're here.
I'd say keep it the way it is. I think this is functional.
Councilmember Kern.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the safety improvements are clearly defined. The only request that I have is that we talked about this last year, and you said you would be able to look into this. It's the intersection at what is it, Dahlia and Cherry, where we no longer have a right turn lane, or it's a no right turn on red. If we can work on fixing that so that traffic can ease through better.
That one we did talk about, and we peel that one back. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, you haven't. Nothing's changed about that
Yeah.
one yet. But
Yes, Councilmember Hamilton.
I might be an outlier in this. I mean, I think the bike, that part that you just talked about at the intersection, peeling that back is beneficial, given the feedback. I mean, the bike lane part, I've just heard so much negative feedback on it. It's really difficult for me to support restriping that includes that. I think the speed bumps, the raised walkway, if there's another raised walkway, totally in support of that, to make the pedestrian crossings as safe as possible. Yeah, I'll just end there.
Councilmember Cooper.
One quick question. Why would we not consider removing parking on one side of the road?
I think that is a normal part of daily life. People depend on in front of their homes, especially if you're gonna add ADUs and there's additional parking. Like, I just can't predict the future, but if we thought Via Appy going from 4 lanes to 2 created a big outburst, I think going to one side of Polk Dahlia and saying you've lost your on-street parking will be an interesting set of public meetings.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
you guys can lead that one.
right. I mean, I've seen that. I think Boulder has tried that in some places, but yeah. But I would tend towards just leaving the road as it is.
Did you want to add something or a motion?
I was going to add my agreement and maybe do a motion, but go ahead.
Yeah. You're not an outlier. I'm with you, Member Tim. I agree with what you said.
But so I agree with Councilmember Dickinson that it's worked. I think it's been effective for a lot of reasons that have been said. I do think there's a problem with edge cases with people from out of town who just aren't familiar. And this is like too detailed, and I'll just say it quickly. The signs that explain how the street works are very small and hard to read. And if we can do something about communication to fix that piece of it, I just think it's such an improvement. It's such creative thinking. And I'm walking the talk. I drive it every day. I bike it many times a week, and it works well for both. I don't have problems. I think a lot of people don't have problems. We're going to make roughly half the people unhappy if we keep the advisory bike lanes, but I think that's okay.
The only thing I'll say with the nitpicking is it is weird to me that the instruction comes after you're already in it, right? So 50 to 100 yards into this new configuration, there's a sign that tells you how to be in that configuration. So I think I do think it should come before you enter it, and that would be helpful. So bigger and earlier would be great. I'm not as familiar coming from Cherry. Oh, there is one eventually. I just don't know. I don't know if there's ever a moment on Cherry where that advisory bike lane isn't there. I'm just not as familiar for whatever reason coming that direction.
Yes, it's good comments.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I guess I'd move we give the direction to keep the current configuration, but to consider and take some steps to improve communication around how it works. And pursue additional raised crosswalks to the extent you think it's appropriate.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. Okay. Is there anything else on these topics that we haven't covered for right now? Okay. What I would say is please review, to the public, please review the information that Public Works put together, because I think it's really, really good. I think it hopefully will take care of us. You go forth and keep us safe. And we appreciate all the hard work you've done and the direction that you've taken to us or from us to this point, and expect you'll take the direction forward from here. Thanks. I think we're looking for a motion at this point.
So move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?